Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Hopkinton Board of Selectmen for March 5th, 2019. We will begin our meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have any scouts in the neighborhood? No. Okay. All rise, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will start with our public forum, where members of the public are invited to share their ideas, comments, or ask questions regarding town government. Is there anyone who'd like to speak? Please come up to the mic. Shy group. Okay.
Yeah, you got a real shy group here tonight.
All right. Well, seeing none, we will start off with our Hopkinton 101 event, and I see Heather Bachman is here. Heather Bachman and Jesse McCarthy of the Hopkinton Public Library will announce this year's Hopkinton 101 event planned for March 30th, 2019. Good evening, Heather.
Good evening.
What you got.
I'm actually not really talking tonight. I'm going to introduce you to Jessie McCarthy, our adult services librarian, and let her talk to you.
So we started Hopkinton 101 last year. This will be our second one, March 30th from 10 to 2. It's basically a community fair style event with different board members and organizations, nonprofit organizations come in. And it's a chance for everyone to meet each other and socialize and see what kind of services are offered in town. So it was really successful last year, and we hope to keep growing it and building it.
Certainly, if the Board of Selectmen have the opportunity to drop in, I think Mr. Coutinho, you were there last year, at least, right? It was a really great event for the community and both the groups that were there and the residents that stopped in. We'd love to see you again.
I heard great things about it. I stopped in, the place was jumping. I think you said to us now it's not going to be big, you're not going to be able to contain it in the one room. You're going to have it throughout. If groups want to participate or have a spot or a table, do they need to register with you ahead of time? How does that work?
Yep, just email me and we'll set it up.
And are you looking also for town government or primarily various citizen groups through town?
Both. Nonprofits, but we also have Connor's will be there with some information about annual meeting and things like that. So,
And I know Sean, Board of Health was there last year. A number of the committees came.
So have you sent notices to the various boards and committees encouraging them, the various?
Yeah, we've invited them all, yep.
Okay, good. All right, so you're the contact, Jesse's the contact person with an email if you want to participate, and what's your deadline?
Probably about a week before.
Week before.
Yeah, we can move pretty fast, so.
We'll do what we can. If anybody wants to come, we'll try and make it work.
Great, well, I'm sure it's going to be a great event, because you sure did a good job last year, so.
Yep.
Great. Well, thanks for coming and telling us and announcing it so everybody at home can see and be on the lookout, and certainly make sure you get there. Irfan?
Quick question, where will this be held?
It will be at the library, probably all 3 floors. We are going to have some of the kids-focused organizations upstairs in the children's room, a lot in that main large event room and spilling out probably into the lobby a little bit, and then some groups downstairs in the lower level as well.
Fantastic.
So we take over the whole library for the day.
And the hours?
Work in the library.
We do have quiet study rooms, though, if you do need quiet spots.
What are the hours?
10 to 2.
10 to 2. Okay.
And that's on March 30th?
Yes.
Saturday. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
thanks for coming and telling us. Okay, great.
All right.
And we are very happy to have the next agenda item. This is the Deputy Police Chief Ceremony. And the Board of Selectmen will formally accept Police Chief Edward Lee's recommendation to promote Lieutenant Joseph Bennett as Hopkinton Deputy Police Chief, effective March 5th, that's today, 2019. Come on up. Chief and Deputy Chief, welcome.
Well, it's my pleasure to present Lieutenant Bennett for the position of Deputy Chief with your permission. I'll start off with a little bio about the career of Lieutenant Bennett, who came to us in 1993 after serving in Southborough and Sutton Police Department. He has served in patrol detectives and held the rank of sergeant for 16 years. As sergeant, Lieutenant Bennett, who is in charge of detectives, communications, court prosecutor, and school resource program. Currently, Lieutenant Bennett is second in command at the Hopkinton Police Department. He oversees budget, records, professional standards, including internal affairs and training. Internal affairs, not the best job, but Lieutenant Bennett continues to serve as the grant administrator and has been successfully awarded over $1 million in grant funds. These funding opportunities have brought funding for equipment, training, overtime, and hiring personnel. Most notably, the School Resource Officer Program was created using federal funds for hiring of 2 police officers to backfill assignments of the new SROs. Lieutenant Bennett was instrumental in the creation and the consolidation of the public safety dispatch and worked on all facets of the information, including hiring, training, and policy development. Lieutenant Bennett is a member of the Boston Marathon Executive Planning Team. His primary responsibility for the security plan and deployment of internal and external sources. This collaboration brings over 900 police officers from over 60 agencies, including 7 states and several federal agencies. While assigned as a detective, Lieutenant Bennett received recognition from the Massachusetts House of Representatives for his work in the Tri-County Drug Force, and he has also been recognized by Mothers Against Drunk Drivers for his work in preventing drunk driving. In 2009, Lieutenant Bennett received the Hopkinton Police Meritorious Service Award for his actions when a man armed with a knife attempted to stab him. The man was taken into custody without any serious injuries to the suspect or to other officers. Lieutenant Bennett holds a master's degree in criminal justice administration from Western New England University and has received high-level training, including attending the Roger Williams University Management course, and has received the FBI Law Enforcement Executive Director Association Trilogy Award. Lieutenant Bennett is a dedicated professional with his proven leadership, interpersonal, and communication skills. He is creative and continues to bring creative ideas to fruition through teamwork and results based on leadership. He has an extensive track record of progressive responsibility, accumulated accomplishments resulting in the improved departmental effectiveness, enhanced quality of life for the community.
Excellent. Joe, you've been so much a part of this community for so long. This is really, really nice to see.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm kind of at a loss of words. I'm a little overwhelmed by it. It's truly humbling. I know I couldn't have made or accomplished half of what I have without the blessing of the people that I've been surrounded by in the department and in my personal life, the strong leadership, the commitment that my chiefs have shown, including Chief Lee, and of course, my wife, who suffered through 18 years of nights and being home with children and trying to keep them quiet while I was sleeping, and I just can't say thank you enough to everybody. And I look forward to this opportunity and the new challenges that it brings, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Board members, comments, questions for Joe?
Well, Chief, Deputy Chief. I like that sound of that. I don't know if you remember back in 1993 when you started, but you and I spent about a month together on the Oakhurst Road sewer detail. I was on the other side of the construction. You were on the right side. If there was a problem, I had to stay, you could go. I was very lucky to be able to get to know you very well back then. You have been a shining star in this town since 1993. I know because I've been in this town since 1993, long before that. So we, as a community, are lucky to have someone of your caliber on the police force, whether it be an officer, a sergeant, lieutenant, deputy chief, whatever. We're lucky to have you. The mark of a good leader is always someone that deflects the praise to the people that he works for, and that was the first thing out of your mouth. So you're right, you wouldn't be who you are without the people that surround you, but don't give them 50% of the credit. I'll give them 10. You bring them up. I look in the audience today, I see a lot of the guys on the force that I've known since they got on, some before that. They're all better police officers because of your tutelage, your patience, and your leadership. As a selectman, this is one of the reasons that you run for selectman, because we get to actually do something that's great for the community. Not good, great for the community. You are, as I said, a shining star. I had to send you a text after our last meeting when we discussed you to make sure I didn't offend you when I said that you were disgustingly smart. And anybody who disagrees with the fact that you're disgustingly smart doesn't know you. So from the bottom of my heart, congratulations. Thank you very much for sticking with us for as long as you have. We're looking forward for another 20 years of you not working nights. So thank you for seeing them through. But congratulations, and we're very lucky to have you. And Chief Lee, thank you very much for the words for him. He certainly earned it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, really, it's well-deserved, Chief. Yeah, very good, thank you for doing this. You really epitomize everything we're looking for in a police officer here in Hopkinton. You know, from great community policing and being a, if I can say, a cop that everybody knows and everybody appreciates and respects, to somebody that can, just like with the knife incident, that could turn it on in an instant and go right into personal protection. And that's what every small town's looking for. I think it's a great choice. I'm really pleased to see this happening. But what's this mean? You don't have to work nights now?
Let's see, call. That's still up in the air.
All right. But anyway, really, congratulations. Thank you very much. And I think it was a great pick, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I don't know what else I can say from what's already been said, but of course I can dig something up.
Come on, you're a lawyer.
You know, the art of babble. No, I think what truly makes our force great is the involvement in the community, and I think you've demonstrated that for since '93, and the various initiatives that you've taken on, the safety initiative, the school initiatives. I've told Chief Lee how much I was impressed with the school resource officer, that whole project, and how well it's worked. For my kids to be able to feel comfortable to reach out to a cop, I think is a big step, and I think that's really the relationship that we want between the citizenry and our officers. So I love what you've done, and I'm glad to see that you're sticking around and moving on up.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the disadvantages to going last is,
Bring your
it's
thunder.
not hard to find new ground to cover with you, Joe, quite honestly. From the years I've known you, you just, to me, are the full expression of strength, of professionalism, of approachability, of talent, of all the qualities that a police department in either a large or a small community wants to have, and how many other communities would love to have this kind of a resource that you represent to us. And we've said many times here too, it doesn't matter if you're a small community, a large community, a quiet town. I mean, you read the police reports and maybe it's somebody getting help out of the snow, or it's somebody and it's a possum in the basement. But then the next minute, it can be, someone with a knife. I watched out my window a couple months ago, and there was a whole SWAT team that came up to a house on Hayden Row, or, an attempted murder, and you have to be ready and you have to be trained for that, and, you and our force knows how to respond to each of those situations and turn on a dime, and I think have always responded with the utmost degree of professionalism. And when you see what goes on today and the scrutiny that police departments and policemen are under, what a value to have a force that we really can feel confident in and proud of. And, Wendy, all your years, now you got the little ones here, but it's just so nice to know that we have you as part of our town family, because you've meant so much to us. And I also want to just compliment and thank Chief Lee for the smooth transition, for working this through and making this all work. We're all a stronger, better community because of it, and for both of you. So congratulations. And I don't know, is there pinning? Has this been done? Are we...
Do you have a new number now?
And what do we call you? Lieutenant Bennett kind of rolled off the tongue. We're Deputy Chief Bennett, I guess. That's just Joe, huh?
Madam Chair, I would be happy for you to call me Joe.
Well, I do know, I see on the agenda that it speaks of the selectmen formally appointing or accepting police chief's recommendations. So perhaps we should have a motion?
Right, I'll make a motion to accept Chief Lee's recommendation to promote Lieutenant Joseph Bennett as Hopkinton's Deputy Police Chief effective March 5th, 2019.
I will proudly second that.
That has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that is unanimous and heartily so. Thank you. Get a photo op. Come on, get the little guys too.
Hey, Chief. Chief. Excuse me.
We're gonna do one at a time, all right? So everybody this way?
Alrighty, one more if you would here. We'll do another one. Go right here if you would. Thank you so much. I should get all the boys in. Everybody. Come on, fellas. I don't know if
Boys in blue, that's what we want.
Girls too, Cindy.
as you work.
Cindy, Emery. Emery, come on. Cindy, Emery.
Can you guys squish the TV Cindy and AMC, will you get in front of Ed and Jay?
Okay, and it's looking good.
Cindy, Emery, want to sit down?
All right, you ready?
Okay, we'll do one right here, if you don't mind.
Was tied to.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah.
Sergeant Brown, I mean Timothy? All right, looking good. I see, one more time, we see a lot of love there. A lot of love in this room.
Right.
Congrats to you.
Where's Titan? Exactly. Welcome back. How you doing? Where's Titan? Where's Titan? Doing training? See, where's Titan? We're asking where's Titan?
How you doing? Good to see you. I'm in front of the fireplace. Oh, very good. You're looking great. Oh, thank you. I lost 120 pounds.
Yeah.
It's heroin. It's all heroin.
Those cameras should be okay.
I didn't like the
I've never seen a cop this skinny
Anything else fun?
Oh, we got Tim pulled up. Well, I hope he shows up. He's supposed to be
Moving
here
on.
now. I don't know where the Tim is.
All that excitement now,
Deputy.
He's at, after the consent agenda.
Yep, you do a little crowd control.
Fine.
Working on it. It's like herding cats.
Try the taser.
All right, did you text them?
Okay, go shake at all the children now. I didn't leave any behind.
Congrats, Joe.
It's been done before. I left my kids in random places and didn't miss them. Coming home. Then it was. Okay.
right.
Well, moving along, we will come to our consent agenda, and there are 3 articles. The first is the board minutes. The Board of Selectmen will consider approving the February 26, 2019 Board of Selectmen minutes. Item 2, parade permit, DMSE Sports for the Jimmy Fund Walk. Approval of this parade permit application from Aaron Nemzer on behalf of DMSE Sports would permit the 31st Annual Boston Marathon Jimmy Fund Walk on Sunday, September 22nd, 2019, beginning at the Marathon start line, Main Street, Hopkinton, and ending at Main Street, Route 135, at the Ashland Town Line. There will be a coned lane along the route where there is no sidewalk. No full road closures are being requested. Permitting team recommends approval and report that previous events have been successful. And item 3 is also a parade permit for Max Performance, 13th annual season of triathlon events at Hopkinton State Park. Requests access to town roads. Approval of the parade permit application from Tim Richmond, race director, on behalf of Max Performance, would grant access to town roads for triathlon events to be held on May 11, 2019 and September 8, 2019. No road closures are planned. Only police details will be stationed at key intersections. The bike route will enter Hopkinton roads from Hopkinton State Park. Expected number in attendance is expected to be 600. Permitting team recommends approval and report that previous events have been successful. Would anyone like to pull out any of these agenda items for separate discussion? Okay, I would like just a word on item 2 for the Jimmy Fund Walk. So I would request a motion to approve agenda items 1, board minutes, and 3, parade permit for the 13th annual triathlon.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve items 1 and 3. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That is unanimous. Item 2, my only comment, is anyone here from DMSE Sports? Oh, Ron. Just really quick, because I'm fussy about this litter thing, and I noticed there was a litter control plan, and they said it's acceptable, but the litter control plan simply refers to litter at the start line area. And I just want to make sure that it includes a sweep of the race route as well. It also talked about, that the barrels would be at the gym, at the parking lot, at the structure, but nothing about on the way, so.
There's a sweep team that starts from the middle school where we're going to be hosting all of the registration this year to the start line and all the way down the course, but it will include the entire race course.
So that will be covered whether you put a barrel somewhere along the line or not, but there will be a sweep that encompasses more than just the start area.
Yes, it does.
Sometimes that's where they drop it when they get hot, and then they drink it, and then they drop it. So, okay, that was my only caveat, and I want to make sure that got included. Okay. Is there a motion, please, to approve the parade permit for DMSE Sports Jimmy Fund Walk?
So moved.
Second.
Second, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye, and opposed, that is unanimous. Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Now, there's Mr. Kilduff. We have the Sister City proposal for the town of Limassol, Greece. The Board of Selectmen will consider authorizing a letter from the Chair of the Board to the Mayor of Limassol, Cyprus, to initiate discussions regarding the creation of a sister city relationship between the town of Hopkinton and the town of Limassol. And we have Mr. Kilduff here, representing the 26.2 Foundation, and has done so much on Hopkinton's connections with Greece. So tell us quickly what you got, and this sounds like a great idea, but I've been told share it with the board.
It is a good idea. Just a little bit of background, I have the opportunity to be in front of the Board of Selectmen a fair amount, and I want you to know how much I appreciate that, and I appreciate the time that you give not just the 26.2 Foundation, but me. This idea started back in actually 1996. That's the first year. It was the 100th running of the Boston Marathon. In the Board of Selectmen, it was Maureen Dwinell and Mary Harrington who were on that board, who helped us reach out to the BAA, the Boston Athletic Association, and that's when really we were, I think, probably the first organization in town to receive any charity numbers, but that goes back to 1996, and it started here. 2006, the Selectmen received a letter, I think it was Chairman Clark at that point, from somebody who was interested in putting a sculpture of Kyriakides in town. We were able to work that through, and that sculpture is, as you know, is at mile 1. It's the spirit of the marathon, but the Kyriakides connection is what brings us now to Cyprus. Stellianos Kyriakides was born in Cyprus. When he was training for the 1946 Boston Marathon, he went back to his home from Athens, back to his home in Cyprus, and he trained on the streets in Limassol before he came to Boston and won that. So this community has got a pretty interesting connection based on what was one of the most historic Boston Marathons ever run, and won by Kyriakides. So we've got a sister city relationship in Marathon, Greece. Because now of this connection that this community has with Kyriakides, we've been invited to Limassol to participate in activities around the Limassol Marathon, and also to participate in a conference that's really going to focus on his life. Cyprus is we don't have a lot of time to go and do a geography and historical importance of Cyprus, but that is a very, very critical part of the world at this point. They've discovered, they think there's a large stash of oil off the coast of Cyprus. That's going to become a very vibrant part of the world and a critical part of the world. But all of this is now coming together, and the mayor of Limassol is interested in creating a sister city relationship with Hopkinton. We work pretty hard, and we're not bashful about this. Immediately when people start talking internationally about sister city relationships, they talk about Boston, and we're pretty aggressive about advancing the idea that it really does all start here, and the entry point to the United States for places like Limassol, Cyprus, and Marathon, Greece ought to be Hopkinton. So it's starting to expand. I'm going to be there at the end of the month. It would be in our community's best interest if I could carry with me a letter of introduction and an expression of interest on the part of the board to start discussions to create a sister city relationship with Limassol, Cyprus. That's it in a nutshell.
And I think you also said they've invited you to speak before a number of the government leaders, and you're going to explain Hopkinton's marathon footprint and why this is a logical and natural connection.
And I'm sure none of you would be surprised to know that we'll take a big part of that presentation to talk about Hopkinton and how it fits into the global marathon community. Our footprint is continuing to expand. This will be one more leg in terms of that expansion.
Do board members have questions? It sounds like
Tim, I just want to thank you for constantly expanding our marathon footprint, bringing it internationally to China, to Europe, to Greece. It's like you said that when people think of the Boston Marathon, I want them to think of Hopkinton. It's always a fun thing when I'm traveling throughout the world and I mention the Boston Marathon. I'd say that I live 26.2 miles outside of Boston, and I'm very proud to say that. And lately with the branding of the first mile, it's all of this just brings recognition to Hopkinton and puts us on the map. We are in a great location, but it also just brings us back to our vision statement that we're a healthy, vibrant, well-educated community. And this coupled with the work that you've been doing to try and get this International Marathon Center going to be a center of endurance sports, it's just fabulous. So I just really thank you very much for doing all the work on behalf of Hopkinton.
It's easy to do this kind of stuff when you have boards like the Board of Selectmen and the support that they've given these sort of burgeoning ideas from day one. And I say that, and I'm going to continue to repeat that as well. It's easy.
Well, we are delighted. I think we'll take a vote on this, I guess, but we're very grateful that you've, as John said, taken this initiative, and it sounds like something I would think we'd be pleased to support.
So what's the...
Can I ask for a motion, or...
Well, I'd like to say a couple.
Oh, please, I'm sorry.
So Tim, I know that you're squirming up there. You hate being in the spotlight. The amount of work that you do in the background is amazing. I've been able to kind of see from 30,000 feet the work that you do. Growing up in Hopkinton, it used to be cool to see Tim Kilduff on the front. We knew that you were Bob Lobel's roommate in college, and we knew that you were the first guy on the motorcycle talking through the whole marathon.
No more secrets, though.
That was pretty cool. Now, Bob Lobel would be the one that would say, it's pretty cool to look at Tim Kilduff.
Well, thank you.
You're a wonderful ambassador for Hopkinton. The passion that you've had, we all get passionate about certain things. For me, they go in stages. I might like softball, I might like golf, I might like snowmobiling. You're just the marathon. And I don't mean to say just, but you've carried this level of passion with the marathon since I was just a kid, since I was 5, 6, 7 years old, right through to, I'm just a little older than that now. And it hasn't maintained, it's always increased, and I can't tell you how much I get behind you on the work that you do, because I know that this isn't the Tim Kilduff show, it's for Hopkinton, it's for the marathon, it's for Hopkinton, it's for the marathon. It's not for Tim Kilduff. You're selfless, you don't like to be in the spotlight, and I love being able to make you squirm right here a little bit, I do. But the passion that you bring to the marathon and the level of ambassadorship that you do for our town does not fall on deaf ears here. Thank you very much.
I just have just a little bit. You know, you said that it's easy when you have a supportive Board of Selectmen, but you see, as a selectman, it's easy to support you. You have that vision. None of these initiatives start without someone coming up with the idea, and then not just only coming up with it, but pursuing it and going after it. That's the tenacity that's that you have and that you brought to this town, and I thank you. I'm proud to support you in this endeavor.
Excellent. Mr. Catino, would you like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I request a motion to send a letter from the Chair of the Board to the Mayor of Limassol, Cyprus, to initiate discussions regarding the creation of a sister city relationship between the town of Hopkinton and the city of Limassol.
Actually, I'm requesting that motion. Would you like to make it?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'd like to make that motion.
Good idea.
I'll second it.
I guess I'm not chair now, huh?
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that is unanimous. Do you have the letter that you'd like me to sign now, or do you want to leave it with the...
You know, you're going to be surprised that I don't have one, but we'll do that in the next few days.
Get it over and just let me know.
Okay.
We'll get it signed.
All right, and thank you very, very much for your time.
And
I
thank
appreciate
you
it.
very, very much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Tim. This is great news. And next on our agenda, we have a legislative update, and we are honored to have both State Senator and President of the State Senate, the Honorable Karen Spilka, here tonight, and also our State Representative Carolyn Dykema. The Board of Selectmen will receive a legislative update from Senate President Karen E. Spilka and Representative Carolyn C. Dykema, and the school committee is invited to the meeting. We're pleased that you both could come. I'd like everybody to be able to be in here and participate, so I thought maybe Representatives Dykema and President Spilka, if you could maybe sit in these two, and I know I have the school superintendent and 4 members, so I'm,
We don't have a
5.
microphone.
No, we do another chair. I was going to say, bring one of those threesies forward, and we'll have 5. We need one more. Oh, there's no microphone. Okay, then I think we better put you two over here where there's at least a mic. And,
Thank you for coming.
all right, just as long as you don't feel, Karen, why don't you sit here because there's a microphone? Yeah, because you need to have the mic. I just don't want the school committee to feel left out with your backs, but speak up and... Yeah. I just want to make sure everybody is included, and it's supposed to be a joint meeting, so we'll do the best we can.
We can scooch if...
Welcome, and thank you so much for taking time to come and speak with us tonight from your busy schedule, so I'll be glad to turn it over to you both.
Well, thank you. We haven't talked about how we're going to do this, but okay. Just legislatively, I think all of you know, just in terms of revenue and local aid and Chapter 70, just a real brief overview, and then I may just mention a couple of things that I'm focusing on. Through January, actually now through February, today we got the February revenue numbers that we are under benchmark. Our revenue is not coming in exactly the way that we would have wanted. Most of it is capital gains, some of it is for budget, so we're trying to be cautious with what we do with funding things to finish up this year as well as for next year. But we did base and build a budget on a 2.7% revenue increase from 19 over 20, which would start this July. As you know, the governor came out with his budget proposal in January. The House will do theirs in April, Senate in May, and then hopefully our conference committee can work it out and have state budget by the end of June. But the state's fiscal health actually remains strong, so we were above benchmark for February, which helped, bring us up. We think a lot of it may have to do with the federal tax changes that occurred that would have been filed in December and January, normally under our process, and is being extended for several months because of the federal changes. Overall, our economic outlook still remains good, and, in talking with the governor, they're not worried yet, or administration and finance, about the dip in revenue and it being under benchmark. I'm happy to say that over the last year, we were able to put $700 million into the state's rainy day fund, so we now have over $2 billion in there. It's great. We have made great strides with that. It's not a matter of if there's going to be another recession. It's a matter, as we all know, when. So that will happen. And I can talk about, if you want at some point, Chapter 70, or, what may happen with the governor's bill that came out, made some changes with Chapter 70. We're hoping to pass a bill that we may even get it done before the budget this time. The Foundation Budget Review Commission's recommendations that would make some changes to the education funding formula, and take into account the recommendations to fund healthcare. For example, in 1993, when Chapter 70 was first done, healthcare insurance wasn't even a part of the state's reimbursement or consideration as to how much does it cost to educate our children. Clearly, not only is it a big part, but it's, strangling school districts, towns, and, others, people, their budgets across the state. So it takes into account healthcare, ELL students, low-income students, and special education, supplementing both in-district and out-of-district, which would help our cities and towns across the state. We're hoping that to get that done, we came very close to doing it the end of last session, and I know that the chairs of the Education Committee have already met and sort of tried to map out a strategy. So that's something that I think would be very significant. It would be the most significant change of the ed law in the last couple of decades. So, and eventually, it will help Hopkinton with increased funding as well. There's that. I won't necessarily go into all that's happened. The special education funding that is a part of it would help. That would supplement the special ed circuit breaker funding that we have made an attempt to fully fund the last few years. This past for 2019, it is at the full 75%, that helping, all of the schools, and Hopkinton benefits from that as well. There's other things that we're looking at in terms of charter school reimbursements and other areas of funding that will be part of the discussion for school funding as well. I do just want to mention, as I look at, the next upcoming session, the priorities that I have in addition to the education funding and making changes, it touches on other areas as well, from education to transportation to climate change, and looking at housing, all looking towards lasting prosperity for the Commonwealth. Healthcare is an area also that we came very close to having a major healthcare reform and cost containment bill the end of last session. Hoping that we can do another bill that would make some major reforms and build on what we looked at last year, and save money for not only our consumers, but for our cities and towns across the Commonwealth as well. There are some initiatives, we will be looking at that, but that's another major issue, priority issue, that I think that we need to look at, along with the rising costs of prescription drugs. Climate change is another area that I think almost anything that we look at should be looked at through the lens of climate change, whether it be transportation reform, housing, or other issues. It's something that we need to really focus on. And I believe that Massachusetts can be a leader in this area, not only in climate change adaptation and resiliency, but job creation. You know, we've started doing it, and I think that we have the possibility to really be a job creator. We grabbed it with offshore wind. We were the first on the whole northeast coast, and we've added more megawatts over the years for offshore wind. So the industries from Denmark and some of the other countries are coming here to build their manufacturing facilities here, their headquarters here, their jobs here in Massachusetts, which will be helpful. You know, other areas for smart environmental change, I believe we need to be working with our cities and towns like Hopkinton as to what more can we do. It's not just the coastal areas that need the resiliency and the adaptation, it's inland as well. So I think that that's really important. The other two areas I just want to note that, you know, I'm forming a working group in the Senate would be transportation. I've been speaking a lot about that, and after a 2.5-hour ride into Boston this morning, and almost an hour and a half on the way back, it's really frustrating. Everywhere I go, transportation, congestion, traffic is like the hot topic, the major topic of everybody, and we can't keep putting that off. So we're looking at transportation infrastructure, as well as asking the chair of the Senate Committee, the Senate on Revenue, to do an informal working group as well to look at our revenue and how it hasn't been looked at in decades. So what can we do to make our tax code stronger, fair, and still provide the services and programs that we want to provide? So that's just a smattering, and the last thing I want to mention, which is a personal issue for me, is mental health. As some of you know, my father had mental illness, and this is an issue that is very important for me. So I really would like to try to work to making mental health care as routine as we do with our physical care, and approach it in the same way, get rid of the stigma, and have true mental health parity in insurance for once and for all. So those that's the overall agenda that I have at the start of this new legislative session. It's exciting. There's a lot going on. The Senate and the House are very busy, working with very closely the administration in making sure that we get things done for people of Hopkinton and the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we ask questions? Oh, wait.
You want to do questions at the end, or you want to do questions now, or?
Well, we can take a few questions now and then go to Representative Dykeman and then kind of have it all around. If you have something you'd like to ask.
Yeah, I was at the MMA last month, I guess 2 months ago now, and they were talking about the Chapter 70. Now, is any of that passed at all, the new algorithm?
No.
Okay.
No, it came really close the last night of the session, but there's redoubling their efforts. We're starting again, and I do believe that it will pass. I'm hoping this year, not even next year, second year of the 2-year session, but I think both the House and the Senate will try to get it done this year.
It was really exciting to hear, the changes to bring up, adding the ESL, adding the healthcare, adding some more of the sped stuff. It just sounded real exciting. That's why I was hoping that went through. And my only other one is keep protecting us on the Mass Pike. Because we continue to foot the bill for all the other construction projects, and just like you said, when we want to use it, it's an hour and a half to get into town.
Right.
And the Southeast Expressway, we built that beautiful tunnel for all those guys, and they don't pay anything.
Right, and I remind Secretary Pollock that very frequently, and when I talk to her about the viaduct that they want to build along the Beacon Yard and lowering the Pike and raising Starrow Drive and fixing some of the train, which will eventually help our commuters, which is great, but it's like an 8-year project. And I asked her, well, how are you going to pay for this? And some of it was through bonding, some of it was through state funds, and possibly some of it was through toll increases. So I said, well, are there plans for other areas of the state or at the borders? The response was not yet. So I said, well, then don't count on toll increases to pay for this. We need to come up with alternatives. Or I believe that we should be looking at tolls at other areas of the state and at the borders. Connecticut is looking at it, Rhode Island, some other states. Now is the time where the federal government may be approving states to put tolls on federal roads, and we should be looking into that and applying for that. We don't need their approval for state roads. So we should, if tolls are such a great idea for the Pike and for raising money to fix the infrastructure, it should be a great idea for all of our roads.
Because I know it used to be that we can't put up toll booths or anything, but with the...
We have the gantries now.
With the gantries now, not that I want anybody saying that John's advocating for more taxes and tolling and stuff like that, but no, but the rest of the state... It's fairness. It really comes down to fairness, and why, for the past 50 years that we've been paying for the rest of the state.
Yes, I've raised that with the governor,
Thanks for always
too.
protecting us.
Yes.
I know
I think the Metro West
delegation
delegation is all united in this, and we will fight that. So,
Great, thanks.
thank you.
Good.
All right for now?
Let's go to the end, so we can...
So,
Thank you, Karen.
thank you for having us. It's
See you
great to
again.
be here, and I was watching Tim Kilduff up here, and I thought, it's almost marathon time again. I can't believe it. So, exciting time to be here. And the transportation conversation is definitely something that has escalated recently. I think the congestion on the Mass Pike has reached new levels. And if you look at the statistics that have come out, that sort of bears out. And I think one of the downsides of an up economy, it's exciting to have all the jobs, but I think there's also a commensurate increase in traffic, which is challenging for anyone to go into town. And one of the things I've been focusing on has been the commuter rail. I know there are a lot of commuter rail riders here in Hopkinton. I personally have 2 commuter rail stops in my district, the one in Southborough and the one in Westborough. And of course at Ashland I know is used frequently by Hopkinton residents. And we do not have the reliability nor the frequency that we need to have given the economic opportunity here in Metro West and given the number of commuters that we have going into Boston. So I've made that one of my priorities. I serve on a couple of groups. One is the vision study for commuter rail, which is a state level look at what is the commuter rail going to look like in 2040 and how are we going to plan out investments to have a reliable commuter rail infrastructure that addresses the concerns that I've heard about lack of timeliness. We need some new locomotives. A lot of our locomotives are, 50 years old, well past their useful lives. We've been working to try and get them refurbished, and a number of those are starting to come into service now, so we're hoping we'll see some improvements there day to day for the riders. So I think, along with the Mass Pike, I think part of that solution is to improve commuter rail, so that is very much in the works. I thought I would mention a couple of local things that we've been working on. So there was a senior property tax exemption for here in Hopkinton that I know was passed at town meeting, and we worked to get that passed in the legislature, and that was done, which was great to work with you folks on that, signed by the governor in August of 2018. I also filed, many of you know I'm doing a lot of work on veterans, and that's been since the beginning of my tenure in the legislature, and I work very closely with the VSO, Sarah Bateman, who is a regional VSO here and works closely with veterans. And there is a fund, a veterans fund, that allows for certain uses for monies collected through the town to go out to support veterans' needs, one-time needs. including oil, for example, and a few other things. And in meeting with the Veteran Service Officer, we found that there are some needs, specifically legal cost and short-term rental assistance, that are not currently allowed by the state law. So I filed some legislation that would expand the uses of those funds here locally in all the towns served by our VSOs to do that. This is the beginning of the legislative session for us, and so Senate President, obviously on her side, is in a very specific role. I just got assigned to 4 new committees that I had not served on before, one of which is the Vice Chair of Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. And we recently had a visit, as some of you may have seen, up to the Eversource facility here in Hopkinton. One of the things that the committee covers is gas infrastructure, which is very important here to the town, and obviously is very much on the radar for a lot of folks, given what happened in the Merrimack Valley not too long ago, and focused specifically on safety and how can we make sure that our gas infrastructure is safe. So I worked with Eversource to get a number of folks up to look at our facility, to familiarize them with what was here in Hopkinton, not only to see the tanks that are up on the hill and kind of see what the safety measures were on site, but also in my district in Southborough is the SCADA facility, which does the oversight on safety for the facility here in Hopkinton. And Chief Slayman came with us, and we really heard from soup to nuts from the folks at Eversource who are managing that safety facility, kind of what happens, how do they monitor safety, how do they respond, how are they in touch with our local public safety officials to make sure the town is well served. And we got a great overview of things there. And I've also filed some legislation, really having heard some concerns more in terms of what we can do better to make sure that we are kind of belt and suspenders, making sure that we have as many eyes and ears and oversight out on the front lines as possible. So I filed a piece of legislation that would provide for more inspectors on gas infrastructure statewide, as well as to make sure that the engineering oversight of some of these repair projects is what it needs to be and consistently across the state. So I'll be moving that forward in the committee upcoming. You had talked about toll funding, and one of the things that we did a number of years ago was to make sure that tolls that are collected on our highways are actually used on our highways to benefit those folks that pay them. And while we certainly don't appreciate the fact that we're the only folks paying tolls, at least the tolls that we do pay, we want to see coming back locally. And one of those projects is the 495-90 intersection redesign, which is well underway. I just thought I would give a quick update on that. The plans are still in the works, and that is on the tip and looking to be committed $270 million in funding, including some of that money from federal resources to do a redesign to alleviate some of the traffic and congestion at that intersection. Economically, there's a study that's put forth by the 495 Metro West Partnership every few years about transportation nightmares in our area, and that is one of them, that has been one of them for a long time, so we're glad that we're going to be able to finally make some headway on that regional priority. And lastly, the Main Street corridor funding. That has been something that's been in the works for the town for a long time, and just wanted to let you know that we are very much keeping an eye on that, making sure that that stays on the tip list for the town, and just keeping an eye on it to make sure that that funding is available when everyone is ready to move forward with that project.
I want to just mention Eversource because you brought it up, and backing up a bit to say thank you. You probably both remember not that long ago, there was a whole issue with Eversource Gasgate here in town. There was quite a public outcry. I know we reached out to our legislators for their support and their input, and I think the combination of pressures, including pressures from State House, really did make a difference. And as you know, it turned that situation around, and where there was no other alternative, all of a sudden there was another alternative, and the situation was resolved in our favor. So we really, really appreciate when that kind of assistance can can be given to us, because sometimes an individual communities feel sort of powerless. And I'm really glad to hear of what is currently percolating with respect to Eversource, and just want to say and ask for any kind of assistance that can be given at any level to get these utilities, particularly Eversource, to be more responsive to their local communities, because we recognize they enjoy certain broad protections all the way up to the federal level. And, you know, Hopkinton, we've got our LNG. I've been reading issues about Ashland with their problems with the pipeline section going through. You hear what's gone on with up in the Merrimack Valley. It all seems to be symptomatic of a large degree of unresponsiveness, or feel that they don't need to be responsive to local communities and local concerns because they don't have to be. And sometimes that ends up with tragic results. And so, you know, we're all working at this together, and we all want the good gas resources. It's important to us, but there's certainly a price to be paid. So whatever assistance and influence on a number of levels can be brought for this whole region, it's very much appreciated, and continuing to be a real need for us.
Okay, yeah, I do want to also mention that we will continue to look into that and work with Eversource, working closely with all of you and the town manager, and trying to convey the concerns and work with them. We are passing a supplemental budget, and there is a couple of $1 million in there for the Department of Public Utilities to have a consultant do a study for the pipeline systems across the state as well, in the aftermath of what happened in Merrimack Valley, trying to take one more step to ensure that that doesn't ever happen again.
And I think just generally bringing pressure to bear to encourage the utilities to be willing to work with the communities. Maybe their asks are really small in the big picture, but they're important to the community. And you know, just because they don't have to isn't reason not to, if it's something that'll make us all coexist a little better. So
Definitely.
I jumped in there. Mr. Redstone, did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple of comments. So, Madam Senate President, thank you for finding some time to come out here today. Appreciate that in your busy schedule. You spoke of healthcare. It's nice to know, so we as a board have our eyes on healthcare. It's nice to know that statewide that you have your eyes on it, and that you're actively working on that. It's a crazy, it's just almost unregulated. Just the expenses are insane. I followed that Martin Scarelli, all those hearings with Martin Scarelli and Trey Gowdy, and that drug that he's put up 56-fold or something like that. And you know, if we're pushing back and you're pushing back, and nationally it's pushing back, it's on everybody's radar, and there's a good chance that you may not stop it, but it'll definitely slow it down.
Yeah, we worked with the Millbank Foundation for almost 2 years, and they connected us, and we actually went to Minnesota in the middle of December, a blizzard. We were there in Minnesota meeting with a lot of the healthcare folks there, and we went to several of the other states to hear what they're doing, how they're controlling costs, how they're making some changes to both private healthcare and Medicaid. Came back and continued to explore it, and ended up passing a pretty comprehensive healthcare reform bill. The House did one as well. Again, we came close. There are certain things that we have trouble, like with some aspects of prescription drugs. We can't totally control the costs there, but we believe that we can be doing more, and we can be making, for example, like we have for the health insurance companies, they go to the Health Policy Commission to justify their rate increases, that we can do something similar for the drug manufacturers here in Massachusetts, where they have to be more transparent and open about their costs and what they are charging for their pharmaceutical drugs to help control the rising costs of pharmaceuticals. And there are other things we've looked at. Telemedicine, that can really help control the costs, where particularly in the rural areas, make the telemedicine more available. And looking at ways to use either a new sort of, maybe not an EMT, but something like that for preventative. They're finding, for example, several of the states found that by allowing some of the EMT-like services, people get out of the hospital, they go home after a heart attack or some cardiac episode, they get pains, they immediately call the ambulance. As soon as the ambulance is called, they have to go back into the hospital. They're there for a few more days. The costs go up. If they have somebody that goes to their home that very day, and then the next day, the costs that are saved are just amazing in the long run. It really helps control the cost. So even sometimes little things that turn out to be big savings. So a lot of these things we're looking at, and other more intense areas as well.
And you touched on the mental health. So I'm a nurse, and I'm a manager for a rehab that I work in the Alzheimer's unit. Very heavy in the mental health aspect. I'm also, for 7 or 8 years now, a nurse at the maximum security prison in Shirley, laden in mental health issues. So I can tell you that the stigma of mental health is certainly not today what it was X amount of years ago. You know, it used to be, if you found out that someone was on Prozac, you'd look at them with a raised eyebrow. And it's, socially, I think it's being very much more accepted, recognized as a true affliction, where mental health issues can be as common and prevalent as the flu. Unfortunately, just generally not as temporary as the flu. So I think with your work in the State House, and knowing that it's hit you personally, you know, it's obviously a lot of my comments are healthcare derived, because that's kind of what I know. So I certainly appreciate all the work that you're doing on the mental health aspect as well as the healthcare.
Thank you. Any ideas, please pass them on.
No, you don't want
They're
my
all
ideas.
welcome.
You don't want my ideas. You're smarter than me.
And I think it's worth mentioning when we're talking about the mental health, the related is the opiate crisis, which hasn't come up, but is, still very much on the front burner. If you look at the statistics, it's a long road to get beyond some of these dramatic numbers about deaths, and now we're seeing a lot more of the fentanyl. And even now the carfentanil, which is even, 100 times more powerful than the fentanyl. So, looking at it on the treatment end, the mental health end, the recovery end, at the same time trying to stem the tide of a lot of these synthetic drugs coming into the market locally. So we really, pretty much approaching it from every angle possible. And what's been kind of an eye-opener for me is the way that this problem kind of goes out into the community. And now we're talking about children, who are being impacted by the trauma of having parents or who are overdosing in front of them, and then they're going to school. And so it really does have very wide-ranging community impacts. And as we know, it's everywhere. It's not limited to any community. It's in every community, in every state. And I would say that this is going to be something we're going to be coming up, session after session, trying to find new ways and looking for new ideas to deal with it, and to support communities locally as they try to work from the ground up. Yeah. I know the last couple of years we've gotten some funding in the state budget for local groups to be able to do a lot of the local work in the community, working with families, trying to address this stigma issue, to help people talk about it, right? Because if you can't talk about it, you can't get the help that you need.
Yeah.
Right. We were able to get $75,000 for Hopkinton organizing for prevention program, and then another $75,000 for the substance abuse prevention program at the high school, which, is a great start, and both of those programs do great work, and they're leading the way. So it's wonderful to be able to support them with that.
So working in the prison, At Sousa, at the maximum security, Bridgewater is not equipped to handle maximum security inmates. So any mental health issues, any drug issues, any detoxing, things like that, that has to be done in-house. So I have a lot of firsthand knowledge on that. That when you said the synthetic drugs, that K2 is very, very prevalent in the prisons, and it's the most insane. It turns from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde, or vice versa, however that works. But it really is, it's amazing. I don't consider it a disease. I don't consider it, and that's my personal opinion, I don't think that the opioids is a disease. I think it's an affliction. I've had many arguments with many people about it, and it's my opinion. And you can't go to the street corner and say, give me a syringe full of cancer. Cancer is a disease. I think it's a horrible affliction, and it hits everybody on every social, economic background. It doesn't matter if you're loaded with money or you have none. It hits everybody, and it's a very tough disease. So, tough affliction.
Well, that's why I do think that attacking the mental health side more robustly will help. I don't think all opioid addiction or addictions are stemming from mental health or unmet mental health needs, but I think a lot of them are. So if we can meet the mental health needs of our residents, hopefully that will also cut down in addiction issues. Yeah.
And for Carolyn, it's nice to see you throughout the year at all the veterans events. I've had the pleasure to sit with you at the last couple at the gun club, and it's just nice to see your presence out there at every community thing, it seems, that goes on, and you're just there, and you're a very you're a treasure. I certainly love having you around. It was nice to speak with you at Bob Lavoie's funeral. It's nice to know that you're there, and if I need to send you an email, I get a response back. And I'm not saying that I don't get that from you, Senator. I just generally have more conversations with Ms. Dykema. So I just want to say thanks for all the work that you do for our town. Both of you, thank you for the work that you do for our town, and keep up the good work, because if you don't, we're going to hold you to it.
We have a posted public hearing for 7:45, so what I would like to do is just open that and then put that aside for a few minutes if the applicant is willing, so we can continue, because I don't want to, we really appreciate you taking the time to come.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for the underground propane storage by Faith Community Church. That's the one, correct?
Yes, this is a public hearing relative to an application by Margie Selman on behalf of Faith Community Church to store 5 1,000-gallon tanks of LP gas underground. Fire chief has approved the required permit. This is an amended license for underground propane storage for Faith Community Church. May I have a motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
And second? Second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, okay, that's unanimous. Is there a representative from the Faith Church here? If you don't mind, we'd just like to finish with Representative Dykema and Senator Spilka, and then proceed to the public hearing? Okay. All right, thank you very much. So,
all right, so I'll make mine quick. As we're speaking about the fentanyl issue, there is a Thermo Fisher has this device. It's an optical device called TrueNarc, and I was just wondering if it's possible to look into that, so that just like our public officials now have the stun gun, so that they don't have to go to lethal force. This is just something that it's an optical device that they just aim it at a baggie or something, and it can tell them what the substance is before they even touch it. Because that's what it's called. TrueNarc by Thermo Fisher, and it's been out several years, and many of the communities around us have it. And it's not a very expensive item, but I just think it's one of those things that considering that the new fentanyl that's out, that's just so frightening for public safety officials. And just like this, it's just another tool that they can have to protect themselves. And my only other one is back to Eversource and the relationship with the DPU. And whenever we push back, they hide behind the DPU and they get a carte blanche. When we're talking about repair projects, how, just like when one is repairing a building or a home, at a certain dollar value, percentage of the home, other things kick in. When you talk about commercial, that's when you have to make it a building accessible and such. And I was just hoping that something like that might be able to be enacted with Eversource when they're doing a major repair, sort of like what they were doing before. They were saying, oh, it's just a maintenance, but in actuality, they totally changed the whole place, just so they wouldn't have to abide by the new federal standards. But at some point, we want to make sure that they're not using 1950s and 60s standards, that they're going to the ones that are more generally accepted nowadays. And whatever pressure you can bring to bear, because, again, thank you for two of you for helping on the Gasgate meeting in your office was just wonderful, and I think that sent a message that the two of you were behind us, and it really worked. So again, thank you for that, and I hope that a similar thing can happen with our relationship with Eversource. Just be a community host agreement, something, if they could just come to us and work with us, because we don't ask for a lot. We just want to be safe.
One of the things that I know at that same meeting, I think we had talked about this lack of DPU oversight of this particular gas infrastructure. And one of the provisions that I did add to this gas safety bill that I filed does have to do with additional DPU oversight over certain projects that would, should we get it passed, would facilitate some of similar conversations about this. So the concern is recognized, and I agree that, just from a safety perspective now that we've seen what can happen when there isn't proper oversight and isn't proper safety protocol, that we, hopefully we'll be able to have a serious conversation about that.
Great, thank you very much.
We really do need help from a higher power, the real higher power, but then the lower higher power too. So, Mr. Nasrallah, do you have
Thank
any
you.
comments, please?
So, just to springboard off the Eversource piece, I think the oversight, the DPU oversight is certainly appreciated, but I think community involvement and just getting the word from the people in the town, having community meetings, let us know what's going on and take suggestions. I think, how can that be bad? That really would foster the public partnership between the towns and the utilities. So I thank you for everything that you do there.
And we can certainly raise that with Eversource to do that more and to participate, be a more active community member.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be reassuring to the public at large, especially after what happened in Merrimack Valley. I would like to thank you both for all the work that you've been doing. I think the Veterans Affairs work is incredible. Fuel assistance, I mean, this is really important stuff, and I think it's something that we need. People who have given to this country, we need to give back. So I truly appreciate everything you do there. I appreciate also the foresight that you have in looking at all projects with climate change in mind, and that's one of the things that, when we had our kids, that was my biggest fear. Is like, what world will they live in with a warming planet? We just saw the polar vortex come through. We're seeing the California wildfires, and what's going to come next? It can be scary. And I think having a little bit of vision and looking at what's coming our way and what could come our way and how are we going to manage that is critical. But we can't just accept that it's coming. I think we also need to take measures to oppose it. As a new electric vehicle owner, I would love to see a lot more infrastructure for electric vehicles. It only makes sense, and it's far more fun to drive.
Right, we should have the infrastructure, we should have more incentives for people to want to buy, and we should get more of the car companies. They need to be producing more as well. so that there are better choices among the choices and that they can go further. But that's when, the batteries and the storage is another area that I think Massachusetts, we are the innovation economy. If any state can come up with good storage in batteries for electric cars, for saving the electricity produced by offshore wind and solar to store it for another time, if we don't need to use it all, Massachusetts should be able to do that. And that's one area that I'm hoping we grab the innovation and the jobs with that as well.
And I think we're well suited to. I was amazed when I flew over, I flew out to California, and on the way back I flew over Arizona, and flying over Massachusetts, you see solar panels everywhere. And over Arizona, I didn't see a single one. And it just makes me wonder, okay, well, we're leading the way. Here we are up in the cold Northeast, and we're still able to make the use of the sun. And we have the incentives. And our solar guy's not here to really talk about everything that you guys do for us. But I think that's it's critical, and I think we've been leading the way. I don't understand why a state like Arizona wouldn't have all solar.
Are we all sit here? This is a joint meeting with the school committee as well, and I do apologize for the seating arrangement with people with their backs to them, but we also have 5 members of the school committee, plus the school's superintendent, plus their business manager, Susan Rothermish. So I would certainly like the school committee to get their chance to chime in. Have at it. Please, again, we apologize for the seating arrangements, not to shut you out.
I could flip this around and they can sit here.
Only 2 chairs there, but, well, maybe someone who would like to speak would like to at least come up and use Mr. Nasrallah's microphone if you like. We can do 2 at a time there.
So thank you both so much for coming. It's always a pleasure to see you both in the district, and as Mr. Tenstone said before, we're fortunate to see you quite a bit. I am concerned about a lot of things in Hopkinton, and I love a lot of what you said that will impact us positively. The foundation budget stuff is huge for us. I'm also concerned with unfunded mandates and how that impacts us in the growth. I know that both of you are aware of the growth that we've gone through as a town, and how that's impacted our schools has been particularly difficult. The number of students we have coming in just daily, since we passed our budget, we've had an additional 50 students come into the district. So it's hard to project what we need right now for next year, and it's difficult to be able to continue to meet the needs. And then on top of that, the space issues that we have. Was it last week that we were here with the statement of interest for the MSBA for the Elmwood School, which is currently our 2-3 school. I know you were both at the opening for the marathon,
It came out beautiful. It's a beautiful school.
It did, and it was a beautiful process with the MSBA, and we felt so fortunate to be able to get it done. But we now, as we've seen the growth go through that, it's coming up through each of our schools, and we're going to need some significant investment into our schools to keep them able to meet the needs of the number of students we have. So that's just to put that on your radar. We are getting ready to submit, I think it's our 3rd submission to the MSBA this year for the Elmwood School. I know it's probably a little tricky when we had one in process with the Marathon School, but now that Marathon is done, we are hoping to get called in for Elmwood before we're coming out all kinds of different seams. So that was one. I also...
So can I just ask you, I know that the 2018-2019 school year has exceeded enrollment projections by almost 200 students, right? What is the major age group there?
So
is it the elementary or
so we see it at a couple of different entry points. We see people seem to want to come, and Dr. Kavanaugh has said this more eloquently. I don't want to steal her words, but they come in at different points in the district. The first point is we saw a big surge at the kindergarten for people who presumably want the full K-12 experience. The next grouping we see is a jump in kids coming in the 6th grade, and then the 8th, 9th grade for kids who want to come, or families who want their kids to be here for either the middle and high school years, or just the high school years. So those groups seem to be hit the hardest, but of course, those kindergartners are going to trickle up and feel across the district. We find that our kids, once they come, our grades we don't see big groups dropping off at any point. We had growth across the district, but just more particularly in those grade points. Miss anything good there? So, I don't want to jump in.
No, go ahead, finish up. I do have one question, but I'll wait.
So the mental health is a huge thing. I am a mental health clinician, so that is big for me in my professional life as well, but also from the school committee side. I very much appreciated being at your social emotional learning, and that was, I've lost track of when that was, but that was a great event. And it means a lot to see that at the state level, to see that that is a focus for your office and for coming through the Senate.
Right. This is our third year doing that, and we'll continue. So again, any suggestions for the next time would be great.
It is, though, I know from a school point, it's a challenge to try to find the programs that are going to meet our kids' needs, so that we're not just reacting to issues that pop up, so that we're able to be a little bit more proactive rather than reactive, and just where we're able to build some of those programs and to grow some of that to protect our kids while we're at the same time battling growth and enrollment issues and trying to tackle other unfunded mandates in the state.
Right. Well, one thing that with the mental health initiative, and as Senate Chair of Ways and Means, I tried to put more funds in for programs and services to tackle the mental health issues and concerns, both from kids early on at different programs to creating the family resource centers that now at least we have one in Framingham. I'm hoping it expands in Metro West through adults, but also in schools. We did put some funds in for expanding mental health counselors in some of the larger school districts, and I'm hoping to have that trickle down to all schools. So again, if you have some specific ideas as to how to help, please forward them on to us. That would be great.
I'm not sure I have solutions, but I'm happy to forward thoughts that I have just from the side. But thank you again, both of you, for being here and for all of the work that you do on behalf of our district and for the rest of the Commonwealth. Much appreciated.
Yeah, I also feel the same way. I think everyone's been talking about this. I catch up a little bit of what all you do through social media, and it's amazing the amount of work that both of you do and all the places you seem to show up. One thing, this is just me being one voice asking this question, and actually first starting with thanking you both for having supported the gifted education study in Massachusetts. It's something which is very close and dear to me. And you have very openly talked about mental health and acceptance of that. And I worry about the social emotional needs of this group of students in the state and all over. It is not their choice that this label has been put on them. It's a very heavy label which a lot of people struggle with. So I wonder, what is it that we could do in terms of first recognizing that these kids exist and their particular social emotional needs, and how is it that we can do something to recognize and address their needs?
Yeah, I know there are some bills that were filed this year to address them. The session's just getting started, but if you want, we could forward you the bill numbers and summaries of the bills so that you could at least follow that. And I know that there's discussion about putting some funding for grant programs in the budget as well to address some of these issues.
And I think the commission that was established, right, that you were referencing, that was established, I think, in last year's budget, the role of a commission generally is to get experts around the table to come up with just the kind of recommendations that you're talking about, to identify where students have needs, where the state can intervene with supportive services. So the hope would be out of that commission would come a series of recommendations that would then come back to both the House and the Senate to allow us to then, file legislation or put in place actionable steps forward to address just the kind of needs you're talking about.
Thank you for what you're doing. It's not easy. We have so many things to deal with, and this is one of those things that I feel should come out in the open too, however difficult the conversation is.
Thank you. Thank you for raising it.
I don't know if any of the others wanted to come up.
Do you need to be heard? You can go here.
Come
The big chair?
Just can't talk about solar on that.
To piggyback off one of the things that Nancy mentioned, I think the unfunded mandates in education is just a problem across the board, and it's one of the things that I know it's constantly a work in progress. But in particular, based on the growth that we've seen in the community over the last couple of years, the last 30 days, lots of these children are coming in with special education needs as well. And so I think if we can continue to sort of hammer away at, if the state is going to require, and for sure the needs of the children dictate that we need to provide these services, the cost of these services, special education is an enormous, enormous part of our school budget. And I think that we need to make sure that the laws say we need to require these services, but we need to require these services as sort of a moral obligation to the needs of these children. And it's an enormous cost to the community. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I know that many of the children that have come into the community, even in the last school year calendar, come in with special needs. So it's definitely one of the things that we've focused on in building our budget, but we would love some help from the
Right. Well,
state side.
that's part of the Foundation Budget Review Commission's recommendations. It would increase the assumed percentage of special ed students in school, so school districts would get a bump out of that, and it would, in the budget, it addresses both in-district and out-of-district. So right now, the circuit breaker does more of the out-of-district costs, but again, and I will try, and I think the House has it as a priority too, to fully fund the special ed circuit breaker, but the Foundation Budget Review Commission's changes would be in addition to the special money that cities and towns get from the special education circuit breaker, so that would increase the funding that Hopkinton would get for that.
Which would be great, and along with that too, the transportation piece, which is the other giant chunk of our budget, which is increasing as a result of increased enrollment, but also because with children who require special education transportation, that adds to, so all of these things, it's, growth, unfunded mandates, transportation, you mentioned them all in your presentation, but it's just, the communities are feeling that, and so just to make sure that we keep working to do what we can to soften the blow. Thank you. I'll leave the seat now.
Comment.
Mr. Kamalo, please.
Through the chair, allow me to add to the sentiments of gratitude that have been expressed by board members. Specifically, I want to take this opportunity to thank your professional teams who we work with regularly, whether it's calling Dave or is calling members of your team. They're always very responsive, they're professional, and they have assisted us in many cases. I do have a question though regarding local aid. Granted, you've heard so much regarding the growth in this community. The budget that was proposed by the governor was less than fair to Hopkinton. I think our local aid only went up by 18,000 in spite of the growth that has been talked about tonight. So I'm wondering, are we going to have a local aid resolution soon? And I asked that question because I also heard that the budget process may be finishing in June. That's pretty much late for towns. So I'm wondering whether we're going back to 3 years ago where there was a local aid resolution that will state clearly the levels of local aid so that towns can proceed with their budget processes.
Right. I can tell you, June is when we usually let the cities and towns know. What we usually say, though, is you could at least bank on the governor's numbers, and then I know the House tries to do more, and if we can, the Senate tries to do more. There's pluses and minuses to having a local aid resolution. If there's an agreement between the House and the Senate, and we say in March or whatever, at the beginning of April, this is how much you're getting, and then the numbers get even better, it's harder to add to that after there's an agreement. But in recognition of the fact that we know it does help cities and towns, we've raised that with the House and started discussions. We haven't done that in a number of years because the finances, if you remember, the last few years have been so iffy. They've been really bad, actually, except for this year, where we had to cut, almost $1 billion 2 years ago. So we'll see. We recognize that this is something that does help generally in a lot of ways, and if we can do it, we will.
I just want to say in wrapping up too, we've all been talking about the amount of growth in this town, particularly as it relates to the school population. And, we know the impact on direct education costs, but also there's just so many ancillary effects for all town services and for infrastructure. We're looking, that bubble of students that right now is being accommodated by the Marathon School, and we are most concerned because our request to get into the MSBA school process for Elmwood has been refused twice, but now that bubble of students, they keep growing. They're in first grade now. They're going to be in second or third very soon. So this is creating some real anxiety on the part of the town to literally, where are you going to put these students if we can't start to get these building situations taken care of. And of course, all of our town services, increased needs for Parks and Rec, increased needs for family services, the whole panoply of services. I would also mention, you're probably aware, Carolyn certainly, because she's most familiar with the details of the town. Of course, we decommissioned our center school last fall, well, in June, after Marathon came online. But so now we have this building, which there are a lot of town departmental needs, as well as one really important need to meet is the life skills program for the 18 to 22-year-olds, which has been taking up some classroom space in one of our other schools, which we could stand to free up, and also we could stand to expand that program if we could use the center school, as well as all the other town services that grow out of town growth. But that, of course, that's probably a $12 or $15 million project to recondition that school. So that's another pressure on our town budgets that come out of town growth. And so I just wanted to mention the variety of pressures that I know all towns experience these when they experience growth, but as you know, Hopkinton has really been a standout in the state of Massachusetts for exponential growth right now. So, I just want you to be aware of where some of the other concerns lie, that if there's any way that assistance can be brought in one way or another to relieve some of those pressures, it's really an important thing for us. So, but what you've done, and we're just so glad that we have you on our team, and that you've taken this time, and that the communication lines are always so open with both your offices. And I think we should probably wrap it up, because you have given more than enough time. I think you were scheduled for 45 minutes, and you've given us more than an hour, and I know you're awful busy. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
We will.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Good to see you too. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you much. Good to see you again. Yeah, absolutely.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thanks. Thank you. We dispersed the first funds from that Veterans Fund as a district. First disbursement. Yeah, thank you.
It spreads out into everything, doesn't it? Thank you for coming. It's great to see the whole school committee there. That sends a message. It does. But I know. We gotta work something out with some extra chairs in here. That was bad. Good, Meg, thanks.
I don't see any of the neighbors.
I don't want. Okay, Faith Community Church, why don't you come on up? I think this is going to be probably pretty straightforward. We do have another public hearing to open at 8:15, but I don't see a lot of controversy, but that's just me. So welcome. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 148, Section 13. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing relative to an application by Margie Selman on behalf of Faith Community Church to store 5 1,000-gallon tanks of liquefied propane gas underground. The fire chief has approved the required permit. That is the actionable line. So if you want to give us a quick summary, and if there are board questions, but looking over what was sent, all the permitting teams and the fire chief seem to be happy with what you've got, so just give us the quick story.
Okay, it essentially is a paperwork correction or update. The tanks have been in place for over 10 years, since back in 2004-ish. And at that point, that was well before my time working at the church, but at that point, I think the license went through. It came out as a proposed addition. At that time, we had 2,000 gallons stored on the property. We put an addition onto the building, which also then we added 3,000 more gallons of storage onto the land. And at that license, at that time in '04, it said 2,000 existing, plus 3,000 proposed. So it all went through, it's built, the town knows we have 5,000, the fire department knows we have 5,000, so essentially this is really just amending it to correct the paperwork so that everyone is in line with what is in existence.
And Chief, you give your thumbs up, you've looked at this, it meets your requirements, that's what we need to hear. Okay. Any other comments or questions of the board members, or perhaps we can proceed? Mr. Nazralli?
Yeah, quickly. How are these tanks stored? Are they like in concrete containers, and then there's the tank on top of that, and that's buried, or is it directly buried in the ground?
It's buried, it's underground. The only thing you see from the parking lot level are like little domes that stand about this tall, and that's just access points.
Okay.
To fill the tanks or maintain them.
And this might be more for the chief, but
Welcome. Come sit with me.
just what kind of measures are taken in the tanks to prevent rust and leakage?
So the propane filling companies have a responsibility to see that the tanks are in a certain condition. We do a lot of verification through them, and then the fire marshal's office kind of oversees any type of underground storage tanks in that area. So mostly it's the actual filling company that makes sure that they follow the regulations, the number of years, amount they fill, conditions that they're in.
Okay, so they get replaced after a useful life period?
They would, I'm trying to think for propane tanks what the useful life run would be. I'm not exactly sure. I think it would be like a 20-year evaluation that they have, but I'm going to start guessing at that point.
Okay.
Okay, I'll request a motion to approve the license for underground propane storage.
Close the public hearing.
I request a motion first to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that is unanimous. And now I would request a motion to approve the license for underground propane storage as submitted.
Ask public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not ask for public comment. Can I?
Is there any public here that wants to comment on it?
I can reopen the public
Okay.
hearing. Okay, good.
Okay. Would someone like to make that motion, please?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the license for underground propane storage as submitted.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And 8:15, my apologies, it's about a minute late. We have another posted public hearing. This is an amended license for underground storage for the Hopkinton Country Club at 204 Saddle Hill Road. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 148, Section 13, the Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing relative to an application by Joanne Parks on behalf of Hopkinton Country Club, Rebel Hill LLC of 204 Saddle Hill Road to amend its license to increase the amount of gas to be stored underground from a total of 4,000 gallons of liquid propane gas to 4,500 gallons of liquid propane gas in underground containers at the following locations on the property: 3 1,000 gallons at the clubhouse, 1 1,000 gallon at the pool, 1 500 gallon at the cell tower. Fire chief has approved the required permit, and I will request a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And again, you seem to have, looking at the permitting team comments, everybody's blessings, including the most important guy right back there. But maybe you'll give us a quick rundown of what your plans are.
Sure. It's similar to the last hearing that you just heard. It's the addition of a 500-gallon underground tank for the cell tower. All the other permits have been approved in the past. This was an addition to that.
Okay. And so it's really only the 500 that we're really talking about.
That's the amendment, correct?
That's the added, yeah. Chief?
As stated, yeah, we've been reviewing, and these are probably the last two that have caught our eye, and it's all in order.
Go.
Very happy with it.
Excellent. Questions from the board?
I have none.
Just a couple little things. So the tank is to power the cell tower?
That's correct.
Okay. And I was looking at the maintenance shop. It's showing that you have a 350-gallon waste oil tank. What are we doing with so much oil?
I'm sorry?
Are you guys burning the oil, or what's going on with that?
Well, we actually collect the oil when we repair all of our equipment.
Okay.
It's a holding tank.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and it gets picked up and...
Gets hauled off.
Yep.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the public? I did it right this time. Okay.
So Ms. Wright, I will say on the record that I have been a member at this club for 10, 12 years, and they do everything very top-notch. They're very much by the book. I don't know if I need to recuse myself from this because I'm a member, if I need to recuse myself from the vote or not, but I'm speaking as a public and not as a selectman, that they're a great asset to the community.
Do you think, Mr. Kamala, he should recuse? He doesn't have a financial interest.
You don't have a financial interest.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right, hearing no other, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That is unanimous. And I will now request a motion to approve the license for underground storage of liquid propane gas as submitted by Hopkinton Country Club.
So moved again.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Boy, Madam Chair, you get us right back on schedule. Nice job.
Okay. And now we're running free here. No more public hearings. Okay. That's the hard part. FY20. Comprehensive Budget and Capital Budget Hearing. The Board of Selectmen will adopt the FY20 Comprehensive Operating and Capital Budget to be forwarded to the Appropriations Committee. So, Mr. Carmallo, you forwarded to us some suggested changes which look like they will increase the amount of excess levy up to $893,000, and generate about 300+ thousand in savings by finding some of these requested items in other areas of the budget. Actually, why don't you summarize that for the public rather than me?
Yeah, thank you. In fact, with the chair's permission, let me share some remarks. There have been some changes since I sent that memo to the board on Friday. And also, with the chair's permission, I would like to invite Tim O'Leary and Ben Sweeney to join us up front here, because after my remarks, I would like Ben to walk the board through our representation of the tax impact information. You'll recall that on January 28th, with the combined efforts of different town boards as well as department heads, I presented an 81.4 million budget, calling for 6.4 million in additional spending to account for inflation, modest salary increases, and a small number of new initiatives, specifically initiatives designed to address growth in the community. 1.9 million was proposed from state aid and receipts other than property tax, leaving approximately 4.4 million to be raised from new property tax sources. I want to underscore new property tax sources. In the weeks since then, I have listened carefully to the board's feedback on the proposed FY20 budget. I have heard loud and clear the board's message regarding maintaining a modest tax impact increase. Mr. Hare specifically looking for a tax impact net of new growth no greater than 2.5%. And again, through the collaborative efforts of my office, as well as working with department heads and our colleagues from the school department, I have recommended several reductions from that level, including a reduction in expected employee health care costs, a modest reduction in the road paving program, an early purchase of the Hopkinton Day expenses, and the shift of the 3 police cruiser acquisitions from the operating budget to the pay-as-you-go funding. In addition, I should mention the school superintendent is engaging her team as well as the school committee to see if there are any additional reductions that could be offered. This morning, we got some unexpected news, namely, our bill for KIF-TEC will rise by 142,000, above our working estimate of 16,000. Again, the increase is 142,000, above our projected increase of only 16. This is due to the rising enrollment of our students at KIF-TEC. I have asked the school, the superintendent at KIF-TEC to provide a detailed outline of our assessment. That development requires some additional adjustment. And take note, I am proposing that we back off our planned contribution to OPEB by 100,000, dropping back to last year's contribution level of 400,000. And dropping our contribution to the stabilization fund by 42,000, leaving an addition this year of 166,000, which still leaves us with about, I think, a reasonable increase to the fund. As you know, we're trying to get closer to our 5% mark of the operating budget. As you have noted in my prior budget discussions, I am a strong advocate for funding both these areas, but our commitment to our shared vocational education program is a dominant concern. With these increases, now combining the increases we projected in the memo that I shared with the board, and the increases and adjustments that I just discussed in response to the KIF Tech numbers, our new increase need is 4 million, which is 452,000 below the increase I recommended in January, reflecting the many discussions about impact on the taxpayer. Under this revised plan, new growth will contribute an estimated 2 million of the more $4 million needed, and the existing taxpayer base would fund the other 2 million, consisting of 1.6 million from our statutory 2.5% rise limit, and an additional 500,000 from a net of drawdowns of unused levy and the payoff of some excluded debt. I know Mr. Hare has emphasized that we not touch the excess levy, but given the news from KIF Tech and the adjustments that we've already made, it's almost impossible to not touch the excess levy. The combined impact on the existing taxpayer from this series of changes is 2.92%. However, the excess levy number remains is the same as I stated in my memo to the board. We talk about tax impact a great deal. And I think when I presented the budget, I did mention the effort that has gone into better understanding how to represent that information to the public and to the board. At this moment, with your permission, may I have Ben Sweeney walk us through the mathematical representations that we've come up with in explaining this concept.
And if I may ask, because these numbers that you just presented are new to us, could you put those in writing in a memo to the board and to the meeting so we have those?
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
Through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to come to speak to this board today. We continue to evaluate our existing financial communications and whether they are as transparent and as clear as they can possibly be. In that light, upon review of the tax increase summary schedule, which is page 4 in your packet, we became concerned that based on a method of calculation, incomplete conclusions could be drawn by this board and the public. I'm here today to explain what those differences are to ensure that any ancillary conclusions drawn from this data can be as clear and complete as possible. First, I'd like to highlight that the methods used in the calculation of the tax impact that have been previously presented to the board are consistent with the methods used in the FY19 calculations as part of the budget hearings from last year. Secondly, to summarize, the tax impact summary schedule is an accumulation of key figures that are reviewed by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. Those figures are the prior year unused tax levy, the allowable statutory 2.5% increase, new growth, debt exclusions, and the unused levy. Since our communication to the board, as Mr. Kamala mentioned last Friday, there have been no changes to the total proposed tax levy. What is different from our previous communications to the board is the way we're presenting the percentage change computations. The underlying calculation of the aggregate totals are based on several complex formulas using various data sets. Last year, the presentation of the percentages was added in an effort to show the impact to the average taxpayer on a high level and in an easily understood format. Unfortunately, because the aggregate totals were derived from different sources, multiple denominators were used to develop the percentage year-over-year change. Our concern, while that what was presented previously was mathematically and logically accurate, we believe there may be a better way to answer the question, what is the tax impact net of new growth? We've updated the tax impact summary schedule by removing some of the distracting percentage changes. We now use a consistent denominator for 3 aggregate totals: the total tax levy for the existing taxpayers, the total levy for new growth, and the total increase in the tax levy. When using the phrase, what is the impact net of new growth, the correct number would be total tax levy for existing taxpayers in this new format.
Sorry, Ben, just want to be sure that board members are looking at page 4.
Can I just ask for a point of clarification? Now, when we're talking about this change in tax levy to existing taxpayers, now, does this include the reval that was done this past year?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Because this is one of the things that to me was confusing, because here people are thinking they're paying $17.17, which everybody was paying, but their home values all went up. So before we even start talking about the 2.5% or 3% or going into excess levy capacity, we've already hit our taxpayers because of most of their homes' values have gone up. This is what we talked about the last time. And this is what's disconcerting to me, is that here we're talking about hitting excess levy capacity and all this stuff, but we're already taxing our taxpayers more because their home values have gone up. And they don't see that unless they go and sell their homes, and then they're not part of Hopkinton anymore.
Yes, sir, that's exactly correct. And but the way it works in the two-part system, and I think you're dialed right in on this, is that they'll see it in the evaluation go up more than they'll see it in the tax rate change. But they're going to see an average of 2.92%. And of course, that average is an arithmetic mean. There will be people who see less, there will be people who see more of a rise based on whether 2-bedroom condos are hot, or 4-bedroom houses on 3-acre lots are hot, or the middle of the market is hot, and what that does to value. But you're absolutely right that the valuation is where people will see the change. The tax rate won't vary that much.
Well, so, but the amount that each taxpayer will have to pay, the check they write will go up by both of those.
No, well, it's a combined effect of 2.9. So they're not going to get a 2.9 hit on the assessment and then a tax rate rise. It all morphs together and gets resolved at the setting of the tax rate. It's a one-stop impact.
But this is something we won't have next year. We won't have a major reval and sort of recertification where everything else goes up. So we won't have this extra.
So we're doing rolling evaluations. And the assessors visit neighborhoods on a rolling basis, and then they look at segments of the property on a rolling basis. I think this year we're going to focus on cell towers, which is something we haven't looked at in a long time. So that over time we try to get it all. So, but if there were, let's say that Middlesex County continues to boom, as the chair mentioned at the last meeting, and there's a radical rise, then you would see a tax rate reduction. We're just at a point right now where the rise in valuations is not that far off from a normal rise to cover inflation and contract and salary adjustments and so forth.
Well, it's also influenced by how much you spend.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
If your spending stayed even and your valuation went up, your tax rate would actually go down because you'd be spreading it out money along more, but the budgets never go down, so that's why you try to control it.
And that's exactly what I expected to see when the valuations all went up. I said, oh, okay, so we're going to be able to lower taxes this year.
If the valuations went up by 10%, you would be lowering the tax rates, but you still wouldn't be lowering these taxes. You would just have a different formula.
Right, exactly, but the rate would go down. Yes. Yes, and but we're going up and we're going up. Because with, yes.
And if the valuations were going up and the rates were going up, we'd be way out of line.
To your question though about the valuation, so once upon a time, wasn't there like a 5-year period and they did valuations every 5 years? Am I imagining 5 years?
No, that was the last time I worked in municipal government, before my military career, before my federal career. They were periodic, and the shocks were upset the whole community. And at some point in the last 2 decades, the Department of Revenue started recommending more normalized rolling evaluation adjustments, the use of statistical models in interim years, and it would be worth having a session where we really discuss the assessment process, which is designed to smooth out these impacts.
But this was a certification year, though. And that's why they looked a little bit closer, and that's why stuff went up a little bit more than
I'm seeing, I remember the assessors board showing me 3 years, so maybe it was every 3. But so now you said we're doing rolling assessments. So if your property gets reevaluated, how long are you safe for until they come again? I mean, can you assume that they're not going to come back for another 2? I mean, could it be next year? Mary, you're shaking your head.
I have to tell you, I am just beginning to reemerge into this world, and I understand that it's a rolling basis. I know my parents used to be safe for 10 years between assessments, and it would be right after the assessment, it was time to buy the house and get some new appliances. You knew you were locked in for a while. And that was considered unfair to the newcomers and to people who did pull permits and did improvements, because everyone else lagged for a long period of time and they got upgraded. So
So we don't know what rolling means in terms of when they roll around again. Mary Jo's waving her hand. Can you tell us what the answer to that is, Mary Jo?
It's not quite working like that anymore.
Yeah.
We do adjust for market annually. And that takes some of it off. The state certifies it periodically, but we do kind of try to keep up with it as much as possible. The assessments do run 1.5 years behind the market, though, because you have to have that full year of deeds in order to do it. But we do adjust every year, and as far as inspections go, they're cyclical now, so that's why we have the assistant to the assessor who goes out all the time doing inspections for the next cyclical. So that's just a matter of the Department of Revenue coming in and certifying the values that we are constantly working on and changing. So, but usually when the values go up, the rate will go down. I know I used to do the recap sheet on occasion. It hasn't been lately because the rate is done by the amount of money the tax spends at town meeting.
Right.
When you look at the recap sheet, or the amount the town needs to operate from what they've spent, if you look at the recap sheet, every single penny the town has to spend is attributed to on that, and the state goes through it, and we get a rate. The values is only how the rate is spread around. So because the values went up this time and the rate stayed the same, means we were spending more. And that's the bottom line. You have to not spend to get your rate.
My point exactly.
I know. I didn't mean to put it, but thank you for that extra information.
So it's a statistical method, as you said, in the interim years, and then rolling physical assessments, and that's the method to try to not have lags that are unfair to some people and benefit some people. I think that's the idea behind it. And with many contract agreements in place for employees, with contract raises, and with inflation and the cost of fuel and goods, I mean, to think that we're going to spend the same year to year without reducing services is difficult math.
I don't know if I'm, so when you throw the increase in fuel's gone down to $1 a gallon over the last year, so you can't throw that in there. A lot of people in town, I'm not saying that I do or don't agree, but they say it's a shell game, where, like Mr. Catino said, your tax rate may stay the same or it may go down, but they're gonna add $50,000, $75,000 to your house. So at the end of the year, your net $300, $400, $500, $600, $800 more, where they're saying that the tax rate goes up. And one of the demographics that I'm very keen on are the seniors in town, and when you get the phone calls or the chance run-ins with some of the seniors in town that are saying, this is supposed to be this, and they're evaluating my house now at net $75,000 more, so I'm spending X amount of dollars more. They just don't have it, and it's very frustrating for me to see stuff like that. But we're here now to kind of spend less. So we get the knife out and let's start cutting.
When B. McMullen catches you walking out of church.
B. McMullen is the least of my problems. Try Mary Harrington.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's a good, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay. So, again, I thought it was important for the finance team, and I should acknowledge Dave Naltarjan, the accountant. He's here. He's been an integral part in really looking closely at how we represent this information to the public.
So, before we came up to this meeting, where we thought that we were going to spend net $16,000, then we find out we're plus $142,000 at Keefe Tech. We were very close to that 2.5%. We were at, I believe, 2.72%. So with that 140, it puts us up at the 2.9. So we're just going to have to be a little bit more creative to get to that 2.5. Yes.
I always say that this is a long process until town meeting. We will continue to look at the numbers as they come in. We did hear from our state representatives today that they are now working on moving the state budget process forward, and hopefully, the numbers coming from the House and the Senate will be more beneficial to this community than the numbers we've seen so far.
So we haven't had a chance to look over the new things that were just presented to us tonight. Looking based on what had been sent out a couple days ago, recalculating, so with that sources and uses document that we had, I was seeing that some of the income now was taking 700, I'm looking at the old sheet that we had from March 1st, was taking $750,000 out of the stabilization fund, which hadn't happened before. That wasn't in the sources and uses document that we had at the end of January. And I kind of worried about that. It looked to me, I don't know if I'm reading this wrong, it looked to me like part of the way we were adding, I know Mr. Hurt really wanted to increase the unused levy, so we were sort of backfilling that with taking out $750,000 from the stabilization fund, that seemed to be pretty much the number that made the whole revised budget as of March 1st work. And I was worried about and I don't know what the numbers are in the new budget, but if I'm looking at that right, I was a little concerned just philosophically it seemed that we're trying to not use, build up our excess levy or not use that levy capacity in exchange for taking the money out of our rainy day fund.
In fact, the budget does not propose appropriating any money from the reserve fund. Instead, the budget initially was putting more into the rainy day fund. However, based on changes that we've discussed, we're now putting less into the rainy day fund. Again, the budget does not propose appropriating from the stabilization fund.
Well, okay, I'm going to just have to be working with the one we had as of March 1st, because I just haven't had time to look at these, but in that, the top set of numbers are the income numbers, and it comes from 2.5%, new growth, blah, blah, and then it says stabilization fund, $750,000. So that looks to me like that's an income source on our income side, that we're taking 750 out. Then now down at the bottom of that, it shows that we're putting 250, transferring it into stabilization. So we're taking out 750, putting in 250 back into our fund that we just took out from, which ends up basically reducing the overall fund by 500,000 in order to accommodate the leaving more money in the excess levy. That's what I'm looking at on that. And it looks to me like the Mass Department of Revenue recommends that communities have about 5% of their annual budget be stabilization fund. And I think last year we were at 4.2, so if now we're dropping it by 500,000 and our trajectory is for, increasing budgets and decreased new growth, it just, I don't know if I'm reading this wrong, but it's looking to me like we're deciding to dip into our rainy day fund to backfill our expense needs, which is not a real good policy if it's a one-time problem, but if your trajectory is downward for income, that's a dangerous route.
Through the chair, absolutely. If we were doing that, that will not be the way to go. To explain, the top part of the sources and uses document, where you see that 750,000,
yep,
that's merely identifying the sources that we have. I think what this then doesn't say is that the $750,000 that we were looking at was coming from free cash. Yeah, not from stabilization. It's coming from free cash.
Stabilization goes up, Madam Chair, and goes before that. The free cash is used to maintain those positions.
So we had I think we had like 3.2 in certified free cash, but then by the time you took out the other obligations, it was like 2.3 that was available for other uses. So is that 750 in that 3.2?
Through the chair, if you refer to page 3, it has a detail of the free cash. Is it included in there? So
right. No, that's what I'm looking at. Maybe I'm getting too into the weeds. I spent a lot of time with this, and it just looked to me like we were borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, which worried me. I have too many pieces of paper here, and I can't find what I want.
Again, apologies for the late change.
Yeah.
We were to try to get this email this morning with the increase. In both cases.
So can you explain to me on free cash, on page 3, it says the free cash, this was what was certified, was 3.2. And then after you take out these other things that are already encumbered, like snow and ice and budgets, prior year bills, it left balance available for FY 2020 of roughly 2.3 million. So are you saying that 750 for the stabilization is in one of these free cash numbers here?
Through the chair, below that, under FY 2020 appropriations, there's capital pay-as-you-go of 1.6 million, and then listed the stabilization fund and the OPEB trust, and that is the source on the top part of that, of the sources and uses spreadsheet.
Through the chair.
Please.
So are there opportunities to fund OPEB and general stabilization fund at less than proposed, freeing up free cash, and if so, can the freed up free cash be used to offset the tax impact?
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the approaches we've used. The information that I shared with you identifies instances where we are moving items from being funded through taxation to being funded through free cash. How do we get that free cash? We got that free cash by downsizing our investments in OPEB and in the stabilization fund.
So the 3 police cruisers that will move from the operating budget to the pay-go is an example of that. Where we scoured every line of the budget, and the school scoured every line to look for things that were truly one-time needs this year that were being included in the recurring base. Madam Chair.
So what makes up free cash, by and large, is funds that are budgeted and are left at the end of the budget year.
Yes.
And those get certified, and then we take that free cash and we spend it on other stuff. But those, we have those overages because the budgets are obviously an estimate. They're not down to the penny. But like last year, we had what? 3.2 million in certified free cash. Doesn't this raise the question that a lot of these budget items could be cut back? If we're coming up with 3.2 million in free cash, couldn't we cut that back and cut it a little closer to the bone and probably still come out all right? And at the end of the year, if one area is a little short, you can encumber it from funds that are in excess in another area, rather than putting it all into free cash and then the next year it's like Candyland, we'll go spend it on something. Why don't we find a way to spend less in the budget year by cutting those numbers back so they don't wind up in free cash? We don't spend it, and it keeps our budget down.
Yeah, that's another exciting observation.
Exciting.
Yeah, free cash. From my perspective, there are 2 key contributors to free cash. One is the conservative approach to our budget projections.
Local receipts.
We project conservatively, and in the past years, our receipts come in higher than what we project.
Particularly with local receipts.
Yes, so that contributes substantially to the free cash.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the budgets. The free cash resulting at the end of the budget year is not by accident. It's through a conscious effort to manage spend. That's why we hire the Ben Sweeneys of this world, to make sure that although town meeting has approved the budget, we don't just go spend widely. What we do is that we measure every spend. And also, remember, we don't spend because we have the money. We spend because there's an ultimate need for. And so, there are items that town meeting says go ahead and purchase this, and we don't. For example, in the town manager's budget, we have money to replace Jamie. We have not. That was one of the contributors to our free cash. And there are many departments that do that. And also in instances where vacancies, at times it takes longer to fill a vacancy. There's one vacancy that we just filled after 18 months, the recycling attendant. So, the part of the answer to, is this excess money? The answer is no. We control spend, which is good. And then the second piece to it is that I like the fact that the community has two opportunities to decide how this money is used. At the time the budget is constructed, and at the time we come to discuss free cash. It's through this process where the community still decides how the money is used. So for me, I would rather have this problem than not have it. That's.
I would just say working in several organizations, Madam Chair, where in government, typically 80% of your expenses are payroll, that lapses in hiring and slow hiring and challenges in filling positions account for substantial amounts. So I've seen organizations choose to budget at 94% of payroll or 96% of payroll and hope they have that lapse, but the town has been more conservative and they budget at payroll as if we have a full workforce. And that's a substantial contributor to the free cash. It's a conservative way to go.
Sure, yeah. I can see both sides. I mean, certainly, it's good management of your budget, of your funds that you have, but it does still beg the question, could we shave things off on the other end and lower the overall budget and not have as much free cash at the end, which goes to something else, and reduce your overall budget?
Madam Chair, if I could. This isn't an arbitrary thing that we do, and I can present this to you. I actually had to present it in my previous employment. The DOR recommends a 5% return over your operating budget be free cash, what your free cash should be. Okay? So, you know, as we've talked about the stabilization fund being at 5%. And all those things. The DOR is actually recommending at the end of your process that you should have, or you should have built in to your process a 5% return to free cash. So by going that route, that's why that's where with the stabilization funds and this free cash, that's what looks attractive to our rating agencies. So therefore, if we start to do those things that you spoke of, you know, be a little bit more leaner, run a little bit more tightening of the belt, that could affect our free cash, which could affect our outlook for the rating agencies. So if we need to go out and get more money or borrow, we may have to pay much higher rates. If we lose our, because it's all liquidity now when we're looking out in the marketplace for bond borrowing. So that's what they look for. They look for that strength. Are you also taking care of, you know, those kinds of things that you're building into your budget? And yes, you know, the local receipts could be a little bit more tight, but then if we have a problem where we say, okay, we've made progress, substantial progress on our investment income, and then next year it tanks. So now we have a problem by doing that. So that's why the DOR also forces us when we change local receipt values of what we're estimating. Anything that has a 5% differential of change, you have to explain why you do these things. So they're also looking out for the people's interest also. So, you know, we want to be conservative. We want to be, you know, we want to make sure that we're dealing with all of the people that may have problems, but we also have to look at the business end too, you know, and if we're going to need to go out and borrow, we want to make sure we have our reserves up to the level where they'll be reconsidered to approve us at the highest rating.
Follow up through the chair. So I can understand having a rainy day fund up there for bond ratings, but wouldn't a rating agency be more would they be happier to lend to somebody that has a tighter budget as opposed to, like you said, a 5%, when we're starting to talk about 5% of free cash, now we're talking like 4.5 million. Then it just seems like that you're missing your budget by a lot right there. And for year after year. And if you held your budget tighter, then that 2.5% that you're going up the next year it's a little bit closer. So you've got your 2.5% plus your free cash. It just almost seems like people say a shell game kind of a thing. It's like, well, wait a minute, why don't we bring it in tighter so the free cash comes in at like $1 million, $1.5 million, so that when the people see their taxes go up 2.5%, it's a true 2.5%. It's not using leftover from last year plus the 2.5%, plus the excess levy capacity, plus we're not going to put as much away, and then it's harder. It ends up looking like this for the average taxpayer. It's like, oh, so which line are we talking about? So here I am. This is my 6th year up here, and it's.
Madam Chair, sir, we are working to try to make what is a pretty complex system with multiple sources clear, and we're going to continue to work to make it more clear. And that's why we've tried to be really upfront and say this is a 2.92% increase to the existing taxpayer base with this plan, and you certainly can adjust this plan. I think the attractive thing about reducing the free cash is you can do it one time, and you could drop it from 3 million to 1.5 million and sharpen your pencil and tighten it up, but next year it's 1.5 million. So it would buy you a one-time improvement, and it would lessen your flexibility in the out years. So if we have a really bad outcome, a really expensive event, a terrible snow season, or other terrible problems, we have many levers we can use with this level of budgetary flexibility to address them, including adjusting the free cash level, the reserve levels, and then slowing procurements during the year, slowing hiring. There are many, many levers for us to make sure we never bust the budget. And if we tighten it beyond what DOR recommends, on that rainy year, not just a rainy day, we would just have that much less flexibility. So, I mean, I'm a fan of very tight budgeting, and for projects especially, but it seems like there's so many variables in the operating budget of the community that the state has prescribed this approach, and we're trying to follow it.
Yeah. The Chair?
Mr. Nisril, please.
So, I certainly don't want to pay more. And I think that's kind of the expression from all of us. And as we're all trying to follow along, we all see that there is various pools that we can dip into, whether it be excess real free cash, excess levy, what have you. I think with the excess levy, we all understand that that's something that we're paying. But I think this is something unusual for the average person. Because typically you look at how much money do I have and you adjust your spending accordingly. Here we'd say how much money are we going to get, and then and how much money are we going to spend, and then we raise it. Right. So it's backwards. So be it. I'm new here and I'm new to municipal.
That's the way it works.
You asked the right question. You set it up exactly right.
That's exactly what I said last year. Exactly.
So, as far as, kind of being conservative fiscally, I think it does make sense to have the free cash on a consistent basis, because, and this is just my thoughts on it, is that what happens if we try to tighten up our budget and we don't have, and then let's say the numbers don't come in where we expected and they come in far worse, then where are we? And then we're into borrowing, and then we're into new debts, and do we want to go there? So, I think you've done a great job in putting this together. I don't want to spend any more money, and knowing that my value has gone up as well as my rates, getting hit from both ends. So I guess we need to spend less.
Yeah, through the chair, see, but, we talk about, something big hitting or something like that, and I'm looking, or we're not gonna have the numbers coming in. I'm just looking over the last 17 years, and we're here. I don't see any, even at, looking at 08 and 09, when the world, to maybe 2010, we went down a little bit, but that's, we've pretty much going up.
Sir, that's a valuation chart you're looking at, the values that you got from the assessor. I don't think everyone has that copy, but it shows a steady climb in valuations, no question.
To be clear, I've been in this town since 2009. Most of those years, the town taxed below Prop 2.5.
Yeah.
We had excess levy, and we were two underwrites. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
Underwrites, yeah, 2 underwrites.
And growth is in those sheets that you have. That reflects not just the base, but it reflects the growth that's been, as somebody who's buying a house Friday, I can tell you the growth here has been remarkable.
So, could I ask what the projected excess levy would be in the outlying years?
Based on the numbers I shared with you, and this is in your document on page 1, we project in 2021 a surplus of 415,227, and then in 2022 it's also around 442,000. Again, if the budget moved forward as presented tonight, including the adjustments we identified, the excess levy will be around 893,000.
So, I don't know if this goes to Norman or to Tim, but what measures can the town take to reduce the overall tax impact, net of new growth, to 2.5%?
I think that goes to my boss.
Stop spending. This was what I was doing last year, and I got beat up for it.
Yeah. Again, I think that's another good question. As I explained earlier, part of the driver behind the budget growth are the initiatives proposed to address the growth in the community. Additional teachers, additional firemen, additional police officers, additional staff in the HR department, increased library hours. If we were going to continue to downsize the budget, those are the things we will not tend to.
Sir, now that you've said that part, thank you for saying that, Madam Chair. Sir, I would say in the long run, a big piece of our operating budget is our debt service. And I'm just starting to look at our debt service. And so we have a certain trajectory for servicing debt and for recapitalizing assets. And we have a normal level of debt service that we're covering now. Over the long run, we could look at the tempo of capital replacement and achieve some stabilization that way. But there's been a lot of enthusiasm and support for rapid recapitalization. And so those debt services associated with that recapitalization come home to roost in the budget every year. So I think having a longer-term, meaningful discussion about the tempo of recapitalization is part of this equation you're struggling with year to year. And it's not something we can turn on a dime. It's an oil tanker, not a speedboat. So thinking about that recapitalization is a long-term opportunity, a 2 to 3 year opportunity for us to think about how those trend lines go out in the future. It's the big non-personnel expense.
So, in terms of making this understand, at the end of the day, the people that are watching at home, they want to know what's going to cost me when I get my tax bill. And sometimes I get a little bit confused, I will admit, by the different percentages and what they actually mean. I hated finance, took it in business school, I hated it, so it's not my strength. But I know last year, in an attempt to try to make things understandable, some of this impact was expressed in a dollar amount, like it means it's going to be an increase on the average tax bill of like $683. I remember we put a dollar figure on it. Seemed to be understandable. I think it may have created more confusion because people's tax bills were, that's what they were expecting, and it was more than that. So can you just tell me and people in plain terms, when we talk about a 2.92% tax impact, can you give people a dollar sense of what that would mean to them? Is this a 2.92% rise over their previous year's tax bill? Is that how they can calculate that?
Yes, on average.
On
So I was
average.
just trying to do the typical $659,000 median home, which isn't
Right.
even an average, it's just the middle house in the market
Okay.
that sells, and then to think about what 2.92% would be on that at the 1717 rate, and I wasn't able to do it with my pen because I was listening to you, but
But basically, that's what they can do. They could look at last year's tax bill and increase, and
where's the number outcome?
Yeah, so I can.
Yeah.
So,
Is that the 307?
Yeah, so Madam Chairman, a approximate increase for a home of valued at approximately $600,000 would be an increase of approximately $310. Would be a 2.9% increase. No, may not be right.
It just sounds a little
Yeah,
low, because I
that's-
just paid my escrow for my tax bill for my closing
Yeah,
Friday,
so
and
we can-
so,
so they take their previous
But
year's
that's
tax
a
bill
goal.
and, how would they calculate that? Just tell me what
it'd
the
be,
process
if
you're
the
using.
median value is 659,000, and it's 17,000 now, at the old, because you assume that the value is gonna go up, right? So if it's 659 times 1717 per thousand, and then I would multiply that by 0.03 to see what or 0.292, 0.0292, to see what that rise would be. Is that what you did?
So that's your 2.92?
And that would tell you that your $10,000 tax bill is gonna go up by 3%, which would be $300. Maybe that's it. Your $10,000 tax bill is gonna go up by $300. And that's, again,
Rough,
you
yeah.
will never hear from the people whose tax bill goes down or doesn't go up goes up by $2, and everybody under the other end of the bell curve whose goes up by $600 is gonna say, why am I above the mean?
Yeah.
But you never hear from the people who are below the mean. So there's a bell curve distribution, and you always hear from the people on the bad tail.
Yeah.
But I think that's not particularly accurate either.
Okay.
Because because it's not taking into account the new assessed value, right? So my my $10,000 tax bill from last year was based on a valuation of X, and now it's X plus 1.
Right.
So
I think it does, sir, Madam Chair, sir, because there's three factors, right? There's the tax bill, the valuation, the rate, and then the 2.92% we're talking about. And so you can either assume that 2.92% increase applies to either the valuation or the tax rate, but it doesn't apply to them both. It just applies to one of them to raise the amount of money that's needed. So you could think of it as your valuation stays the same and your rate goes up by 2.92% average, or you could think that your valuation goes up by 2.92% and your rate stays the same. It's just a 3-element equation, so I think it's in there.
So sorry, through the chair. So the 2.92 takes into account the increased assessed value.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there will be people who call you and say, I did not get 2.92%. And that will happen. That will happen.
Oh, so that, you mean that average of 2.92%?
It's the middle of the bell curve.
Okay.
And it may be that you own a 2-bedroom condo with 4.5 baths and a 2-car garage, and that's the hottest thing in the market, and that valuation just went up tremendously, and you might have an old Rambler in another part of town, and that value didn't change at all, or may even have dropped.
But where I'm confused, though, is then, if my $500,000 house was now revalued at $550,000.
Right. That'd be a 10% rise.
So, and then you multiply that by the 2.93%. So when I'm expecting to pay is 2.93% on 500,000, but instead I'm paying 2.93% on 550,000.
So you're paying, Madam Chair, sir, you were paying $17.70 on 500,000s, right?
Yeah.
And then if your 500,000 goes to 550,000s, and then the rate goes up by 2.9%, so that's your rise. The rate will drop or stabilize or stay the same or go up less than it would if you didn't have an increase.
Yeah. But doesn't the, so but when the tax rate is set, it's, so we're gonna be going up to, we're assuming maybe 1725?
That,
1723?
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
our
I think
projection
that
a
was a
month ago.
projection.
We've actually slashed some off this budget since then.
So then I'm paying 1723 on 550,000. So my point is, as much as it's a three-level, it is an equation with three factors in it, it's, I'm paying tax on another $50,000.
Yes. And if that 50 was right at the mean, and everybody had just the mean rise, if the statistical program the assessors use gave everybody exactly the same rise, a peanut butter spread approach, then the rate, and if the amount we were raising was the same as the 2.5, just miraculously, the rate would stay the same. That would be the math. You'd get the same rate, but you'd still pay more because your assessment went up. If the town meeting determines a need higher than the 2.5%, more money than that will be raised. So even if your house stays the same or everybody's goes up that same amount, there will be a delta in the tax rate.
So to the chair, but my point is, when we look at the new growth numbers of $3 million, and then we look at the revals done, many people would look at us, the Board of Selectmen, saying, why aren't my taxes going down? Why are we spending so much more than the new growth number of 3 million, plus the reval? Why are we spending that much more? And I know it's on us to try and cut budgets.
In fact, through the chair, you're absolutely correct, Mr. Coutinho. The spending is determined by the budget. And I think the other issue that we're discussing, which I believe we have no control over, is the results of the market forces.
Evaluations.
Yes, and the value of real estate here in Hopkinton. We can discuss this issue as much as we want, but we really have no control over the market forces. There were also comments made regarding our free cash. Let me take this opportunity through the chair to refresh the public on why the town has a AAA rating. Number one is the strong economy. Number two is our strong budgetary performance. And part of that budgetary performance relates to our surpluses. We have strong surpluses through free cash. We also have good, strong management, which is what is at play here. This kind of dialogue that the board has leading to better financial policies. Also budgetary flexibility, and that can only happen if we have available fund balances. Our fund balances have been strong. Also, very strong liquidity. We have had right around 15 to 16% of available cash as a business operation, and that's always good. And then finally, we have a very good and strong debt and contingent liability profile, which again I think is at play here. We hear the CFO talking about our long-term debt profile. This is something that the town has paid attention to. I'm reminded of Ron Eldridge's chart with the graph almost touching the ceiling. So I just wanted to refresh the public as to why free cash is an important component of our fiscal health and how it relates to our credit rating, and what are the other factors that are considered when the town is rated.
So, to the chair, one more thing. So God forbid we don't have any more new growth.
Yes.
Okay, because that's one of the things, I'm noticing that's, we're going to probably talk about that later, so some of these warrant articles that are coming up to limit growth, and that's one of the scary things about limiting growth, is that this is the money that we depend on to pay for these contractual agreements that going on, so. Okay, I'll stop.
So, through the chair, I just kind of threw some rough numbers, some of my rough numbers, I don't know if they're right or not, on that 500 versus 550. So the 500,000 at 1717 comes out to 8585. The 550 at 1717 comes out to 9443, which is about, I don't know, $62 increase. But then when you add the 2.93%, that 8585 goes to 8836 versus the 550 goes to 9720, which is, I don't know, almost $1,000.
Oh, no, the 2.93%, that was the 50,000. I actually did a 10%. I actually went up 10%.
Right.
So the 2.93, that was the average, so
Yep, those are just round numbers, but I was just showing that there's, whatever. So, I'm concerned about the proposed tax impact, especially how such increase may affect seniors on fixed income. I want all Hopkintonians to continue to afford to live in the community. I encourage all stakeholders to continue working towards reducing the tax impact down to 2.5%, eliminating the need to use excess levy to balance the budget. Is it too early, or is it a right time to make a motion right now? Can we make a motion to, I'd like the, typed it out. I'd like to make a motion to pass the budget on to the Appropriations Committee with a condition that existing tax base not exceed 2.5% increase and no use of excess levy.
Well, I thought that we had to approve one of these budgets that's been submitted. That's what we've been working on by this time. I don't think we can, from the agenda, it says we're supposed to approve the budget tonight. We need to get this to appropriations, so.
Well, we can beat
this
it
is
up.
the last stop?
No, we can beat it up, and that's what Norman's, but, what number are we, if I may through the chair, what number are we at right now?
The tax impact net of new growth is 2.92%.
And we should be using the sources and uses budget, basically, that's what you distributed tonight.
Yes, and that also comes along with the detailed individual budgets.
And that includes that nasty
Right,
Keep
you're
Tech
right.
100, it includes all the unpleasant surprises that you just got in. So these are the new numbers that we would have to basically be approving.
Yep.
But isn't it a little late to ask appropriations to start?
No, it's, well, I don't know, okay, I'm just holding off on doing a second right now, but just because I want to discuss it a little bit. No, it's, we wouldn't be passing over to appropriations. It would actually mean that Norman has to make a lot of phone calls and do a lot of sharpening in order to try and pull out 0.42%.
Yeah, because what we passed to appropriations is what we've approved, and then they've got to look at the.
Right, so
whether
there'll be a
it's
delay in
reasonable
the
or not,
budget.
but it's
I
not
can
up
see-
to them
I
to
s-
start to get it down to 2.5. That stops here, pretty much.
Right, so it just delays us.
Right. We're already into March.
It delays us getting it over to appropriations before we knock it down. And so my question to Mr. Kamalo is, do we have to use the 0.42% out of excess levy capacity? Is there any other way? Are there any other things that we can do so that we can please Mr. Herr and Mr. Tedstone and everybody out there? Because I'm almost ready to say I want to retire our present excess levy capacity, so that next year, if we have to do this, we have to ask the taxpayers when we do something. But you know, it's good that we have it to make this budget process easier. That's why I got really nervous when we were setting the budget message back in September. And it seemed like when we were telling the schools that they could go up 6% and other people 5% and this, I just said, where did all this money come from? Because normally we were starting to say, okay, 3%, 2%, 1%, and it's almost doubled. Is there anything we can do? I'll just stop talking.
Okay, can I ask,
You
can
can
we
ask anything you
can we
want.
figure out the difference between a 2.5 and a 2.9%? I mean,
We're working on
what's
that.
the dollar amount that we would need to shave off of this budget?
Great question.
Madam Chair, we're working on that right now. I want to not give you the wrong number in a public hearing, so we have two separate teams working on that right now. And we'll tell you as soon as we have a
Yeah.
number we all agree on. If that's,
I mean, like, I know it's not considered good policy to take free cash and use that to fund operating expenses. You're supposed to be able to cover your costs with funds you can raise, but it's not inadmissible. I mean, you can do it, it's just frowned upon. But I mean, like, I was looking at the capital expenditures, and, you know, out of what was it, out of like $1.9 million, out of $1,979,000 in free cash. I'm sorry, but $1,106,000 comes out of school department things. I mean, can some stuff come down from those estimates? Can they have less to work with? Can we use some of the free cash? It just, you know, we started out with 2.3 free cash to work with, and we spent 1.9 of it. It's almost all of it. And, you know, over half is all school stuff, and the schools are the lion's share of the budget to begin with. I'm just wondering, you know, are there some things here? There's like $170,000 for district-wide improvements. Could some of that be reduced? Could we, I had picked out a whole bunch of different things here. You know, I look through these, they're all, some of them are not such big items, but then when you add it up, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, you're at $1.9 million. Can we shave some of these down a little bit and get something out of free cash that goes in there? It's one thought.
I have a lot of confidence in Mr. Kamalu. I mean, he's been magical with the numbers through my tenure here, where he's always able to find that. And I don't know what the end number is on this, the 2.92 versus the 2.5, but I know that I have a lot of confidence if we task Mr. Kamala to do that.
Let's see what the number is.
He'll do it.
Madam Chair, members, the number is $287,000 additional dollars, and it should not be one-time money, it should be operating money.
Well, okay, so that goes to my earlier question about shaving all the budgets. And I understand your point about budgeting in a way that's going to put us in a strong position. But we also had a couple comments here saying, let's tighten it up. Could we not, by looking at that whole budget, I know there's things you can't take away from, employee benefits and contractual, but amongst the things that you could, I mean, we've got, what, an $81 million budget? We can't shave off 200,000, not taking it all from you or you, but, just a little shave here and a little shave there. And, it seems to me out of an $81 million budget, we could cut things back a little here and a little there and come up with 200,000. That's not a huge chunk of money out of 81 million. It'd be a little leaner, but should still be, again, if it's producing 3.2 million in excess in free cash at the end of the year, that still says to me that there's some wiggle room in there that would still give you a strong budget. But that's not my profession, so I don't mean to be telling other people, but it just...
Well, no, yes.
Respectfully, I'd like to suggest the following to the board. One, that if the board is so inclined, approve the budget as presented and forward it to the Appropriations Committee so that the Appropriations Committee can at least begin its review.
We could go back and make changes as they go through?
Yes, as we've done in the past, where clearly the authors of the budget are the selectmen and the town manager. Allow the town manager to continue to work with the superintendent. As I reported earlier, the superintendent may be coming back with some suggestions. We will go back to the department heads as well and see if there are any changes that we could propose, and we'll bring them to the board as these changes are made known to us. So again, I think this is a two-step process. Move the budget forward to the Appropriations Committee as presented, with the understanding that the town manager will continue to work with the school superintendent and the department heads to identify any additional reductions.
Mr. Tedstone, would that satisfy you? And I'll accept the, I'll second it if that's what you want to, because we really do have to get it to
We
appropriations.
can't just tell them to find...
Through the chair. So,
Mr. Nasrallah?
so we do have a second bite at the apple here. We can come back and look at where else, you will be looking at where else can we shave, as Madam Chair had suggested. By moving this forward, we can still reduce, right?
Correct.
I just wanted to add, when I was looking at numbers, it's funny, because I kind of figured we needed about 200,000 too, but I was just looking at budgets and not including, I mean, everybody's got their own numbers, so this may not be right, but not including employee benefits or anything, and not including the schools. I figured if all the remaining general government, public safety, public works, human services, culture and recreation, if they shaved 2% off their budgets, that'd take off about 240,000. And if the schools took off 1/10 of 1%, that would be 48,000. Gives you a savings of 288.5. And I mean, like, that's just one, just one idea of just a little tiny adjustment that, according to my calculations, comes up with almost 300,000, but I don't know. But that's not to be decided now. I was just looking at these figuring, it might not be impossible to do if you took just a little bite here and a little bite there, but. So,
So rather than accept that amendment, I'd rather have my motion die on the floor.
well, it wasn't seconded, so should we perhaps then be making a motion to accept the budget that was presented in the documents dated March 5th? That's the most current that we've got.
Correct.
What was passed out tonight.
Yes.
And that is a budget of $80,994,768.
761.
61, sorry. Two pair of glasses isn't enough. Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we pass on the proposed FY 2020 budget onto the Appropriations Committee with the caveat that the 2.92% increase be worked down to 2.5% as much as possible.
That's a broad stroke. It's two. There's nothing to quantify as much as possible.
Well, yeah, it's, try and find 287,000. You've done it before, you did it 4 years ago, you did it 3 years ago. Even last year, you came in at the last second and you had some great changes. You know, I understand that, you know, and we've beat up this budget, and I know that, public safety is taking some hits, and you already moved around the cruisers and everything else, and we took money out of the roads already. So I know that you really worked it, and you got hit hard with that 142,000. If there's something you can look at that with the Keefe Tech, but yeah, to Mr. Ted Stone's point, I just couldn't second it, only because I know how tough it is. Last year was, people was saying that I was firing teachers, when we're trying to get it down to 3%, and it was tough, and I know that you'll do your best to pull it down.
But I think the key is, like you said, firing teachers, we shouldn't attempt to take it all from one or two
No,
areas.
but that's what I'm saying. When we were trying to limit the growth last year.
Spread the pain, you probably,
Well, this is the thing, people think we're
Yeah.
cutting budgets, and instead we're just
Yeah.
trying to limit growth in budgets in order to, and because, to Mr. Ted Stone's point also, everybody's home value went up,
Right.
and we're taxing them on top of that. And so I want to make sure that the person whose house went up $50,000 doesn't really choke when they open up their tax bill.
If I may, through the chair, may I ask the finance team just one question? Does the 2.92% include debt exclusions that the taxpayers have already said they could be taxed on?
It does not.
Oh, it does not, okay. Just wanted to be sure.
We found that one 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That was a good catch.
Here's perhaps looking back at the process. When we collectively set the budget message, perhaps we need to be firmer on these guidelines. This is on all of us, where perhaps back then our focus was on the percentage increase in the departmental budgets, and perhaps we underestimated the impact, the tax impact. Because I think one of the points of discussion with the department heads is going to be around, well, this is what the budget message said. It did not identify 2.5 as the overall tax impact net of new growth. However, I do understand where the board is coming from. I understand that this is a charge that has been presented to us. However, I still just wanted to talk to the process in general. That going forward, it may be helpful to set these targets when the budget is set.
I got heat for that last year, too.
But, this is probably a discussion for next year. But I mean, relative to the budget message, we struggled with numbers to pick, and it kind of depends on the department. Clearly, the kind of targets we had to give to the schools, considering what they've been facing, is different than what we had to give to other departments. But yet, when you look at the department detail budgets, and there's pages upon pages of them, and you look at the percentage changes, there are some big percentage increases. They weren't anywhere, and there's understandable reasons for them all, but most of these budgets weren't anywhere near the conservative kind of numbers that we talked about in September. You've got 8, 9, 23, 18%, 29%, it's all over the place. So I guess that cuts both ways. But by and large, I can't say that these departments all tried to stay within anywhere near the kind of numbers that we talked. Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. I don't know. I'm just looking at those percentage change numbers that were in the departmental budgets, and they were all over the place.
Yeah, and in fact, I think the other challenge we face is that the distinction between town and school is academic, no pun intended, because the bulk of the town budget accounts for school expenses.
Right.
So really the apportionment is not as precise as we would like it to be.
But I think, if I do the chair, but I think we have to, and I was speaking to the chair of the school committee the other day about this. I think that we do have to be more transparent on that, where if the school budget truly is well into about 70% or 78% or something of the entire budget, the town should know that. And so when we split stuff up, so that what it looks like the school budget's going up 7% because we're figuring it at $50 million as opposed to 65 million, then they'd only be going up 3%. And we'd be able to see a little bit more apples to apples. And to actually carry the personnel expense, or the OPEB numbers and the other expenses that the town carries for the school side. So we know what the cost per pupil truly is, and we can budget appropriately.
Well, given the hour, I think we can talk a long time about what we should do differently, what we should do next year, but right now we have to make a decision on what's in front of us, and it's 9:45. So.
I'm going to
Mr.
second Mr. Catino's motion that we forward the March 5th, 2019 budget as shown with a goal or an aspiration of the town manager to see if that he can bring the amount of unused levy down as much as possible.
How about a directive to make every effort?
I think our message has been pretty loud and clear.
Okay, so you seconded it. Elaine, do we have a sense of what the motion says? Or an attempt? We can fix it?
So was that an amendment to the motion?
I was trying to repeat the motion.
Okay, so the original motion was to forward the budget dated March 5th with the caveat that the 2.9% increase be worked down to 2.5% as much as possible.
So I guess it's a friendly amendment with a goal, as opposed to a caveat.
With a goal of 2.5%?
Yes.
I'll accept that.
As possible.
Okay.
So the goal is 2.5%.
So let's see, do we have to first vote on the amendment?
No, we didn't have that. We didn't, I
Oh, you
just
just,
accepted.
okay, you accepted it, okay. All right. Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed?
Nope.
No. Okay, the motion carries by a vote of 3-1. All right,
What else we got?
thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think this is really helpful to just have this kind of discussion where people can understand or not understand, or share the fact that we don't always understand the numbers, and kind of help us work through it. And I think that further on down, when we have time for other agenda items, it really would be good to have one of these sort of tutorials on the kind of things that boards need to know and the public needs to understand, just in the interest of transparency and just understanding the process.
Yes, ma'am, thank you for the chance to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What are the chances that we could do an underwrite?
Just, we can make a motion.
But we don't,
So if I made a motion to pass an underride to go to town meeting, we would vote on that now?
I think
It's
what the
radical.
board is, what the board could do is to task the town manager to report back to the board at this next meeting regarding the opportunity for an underwrite.
Okay.
Could
So
we,
you're making a motion?
I am.
What are you doing? Is that your motion?
Sure.
I kind of wish this had happened while our financial officer was here to speak to the implications, but he's, Jim's still there. I thought she'd left.
I'm looking right at her.
I'm looking right here. I mean, isn't having a fair amount of excess, in years when we've done underrides, it's because the excess levy capacity got into the millions, like a huge amount, that we felt it was promised to the taxpayers that even though we could go call that in, we wouldn't. We would, if our spending needs got to that level, we were obligated to go to the taxpayers and ask. But we need a certain amount of levy capacity to demonstrate financial strength. That plays into your bond rating, what the agencies look like. Now, the budgets that we had a couple weeks ago was showing an excess levy capacity of about 400,000 and change. Now it's been bumped up to 800,000. And the latest thing that was at the March 5th, I don't recall what it was, but this isn't going into really, I mean, I wouldn't think you would want to reduce it into, I mean, when it was down at 400, I think that's getting kind of low in terms of a cushion that you could draw on. Am I not correct, Tim, that this would not put us in a favorable position when we looked at borrowing?
Madam Chair, I think I understand this, but I'm going to ask Dave to comment on this, because he's actually been through this cycle 10 times, and I understand it, and he's an expert in it. So
Mr. Nalkajian.
He's smart enough to defer to Dave on this question.
So, because this budget is proposed for, as Mr. Kamalo had stated, growth, that we would be looking at those issues next year, having to fund them if we do an underwrite. How are we going to continue to fund those expansions to handle the growth that's happening in the town? That's what a lot of this budget excess, to say, to use a thing, is involving. That's why so many budgets, the aggregate budgets are looking like they're so high, because we're funding growth.
Right.
In positions, for a lot of departments. So if we do an underride, you're going to jeopardize those positions plus future growth by doing the underride.
And what would removing that excess levy capacity do to our financial foundation in the eyes of lending agencies?
So again, it's what they would prefer, and I'm just speaking off, my past knowledge and working with them and having to go through the interview process with them to set the rates. So their thing is liquidity. What do you have that's liquid in things? And that's where stabilization funds, free cash goes on. So again, if you're limiting what we're going to take in or have the ability to take in, then you're potentially diminishing our capacity to have free cash and a liquidable value. So I would, again, it's your decisions, I think, but I think you would be jeopardizing the growth that has been established in this presented budget.
Mr. Kamala?
If I may, I think I understand the board's request. I also understand the response from staff, putting the two together. I think it will be fair for us to at least give this some thought, prepare a report for the board, and then bring it back to the next meeting. At this point, we can simply give you general comments. It will be more helpful for us to have more time to at least prepare a report for the board where you'll understand the pros and the cons for moving forward with an underwrite.
So, Mr. Teston, would you be willing to withdraw that motion and allow some information to be assembled and presented so we can actually have a more educated discussion, and then you could always make the motion if, after we've gathered that, or you continue to feel so inclined?
So the only problem that I have with withdrawing the motion is at our next, I don't know when our next meeting is, but
March 19th.
so if it's brought to us at our next meeting, is it too late at that point to give this to appropriations or whichever department we need to get this to? I just want to make sure that...
Are we too late? Yeah. Are we too late already? Sorry, to the chair.
No, I believe the requirement is 40 days before town meeting to set the ballot questions. I think as the board has discussed this before, really the article at town meeting is purely for discussion purposes. It's for transparency. The legal requirement is that there be a ballot question, and I think ballot questions are set 40 days before the actual vote. So there's still time to do the question.
What I 40 days?
Yeah,
14 days?
Yeah, I think it's 40. I think it's 40 days before. What I understood to be Mr. Tedston's request was that the board authorize town staff to prepare the report. Did I understand you correctly? Yes. And present it to the board at your next meeting, which we'll be happy to do.
I don't feel I'm in any position to take any kind of vote without it being explored further, because this just got thrown out at, 10 minutes to 10? And this is a significant move if we were to do that. So I'm not for or against, but I'd certainly like a little bit more input from people that know more than I do about this. Okay, well, the motion was made. It was not seconded, unless someone wants to second it, otherwise.
What's the motion?
Motion was to.
What's your motion?
Vote on it, all right.
What was my motion?
To direct staff to prepare a report on the possibility of an override to be presented at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, which is the 19th.
Second.
Okay. All right, so the motion is to direct staff to prepare a report. Okay. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. Okay, the last item is the discussion of annual town meeting articles. Let's see. Board will review its own 2019 annual town meeting articles, and we already did Peg Enterprise, Fruit Street Parcel, and Kennel Bylaw at the last meeting. What else?
And in fact, through the chair, our intention was to ask the board if the board has any additional questions on those three bylaws, the kennel bylaw, the PEG access bylaw, and then the Fruit Street article.
Didn't we vote to support those last week? I thought we went through those.
I don't believe the board took positions.
I wasn't here last week, so I'm not sure.
Maybe we just discussed it?
Yep.
I was in Barcelona.
I know you were in Barcelona. Reviewed the draft article. Responsible board reviewed. Okay, we just reviewed them. Okay. Okay, so last week we reviewed them, and there were no additional changes at that time, but we didn't take a position. So are there any further questions on these three that were discussed last week? Or would someone like to make a motion to support the PEG Enterprise Fund article?
I wasn't here to review them, so I'll defer, but I will vote, because I've gone over them already.
They were not in the packet this week, but I have them from last week's packet.
And
It's in last week's packet?
yeah, and through the chair, the board does not need to take action today. All we wanted to know is if you have any additional questions.
Okay.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
All right, so will we take action then at the next meeting on the 19th?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so those three will take action on, and then there were, what were the other ones? There was a whole list here. You had Osmond Overlay Zoning District. Are those aren't ours. Isn't that planning board?
That's planning board stuff.
That's planning board. Main Street Corridor Project easements.
Yeah, we're still talking with Mass DOT to really decide whether there is need for additional language beyond what was approved last year.
Okay. So maybe we'll have more information about that at a
Yes.
future meeting. Municipal parking, that's probably not ready yet?
Yep.
Okay. We want to consider the following. Okay, there's a bunch of veterans abatements.
Yeah, we forwarded this to the principal assessor and the Board of Assessors for their comments, and the board will act after hearing back from the Board of Assessors and principal assessor.
Okay, so we'll wait for that information as well. Okay, and short-term rentals, there were two, a bylaw about short-term rental operators, and also a community impact fee.
Yeah, the board already said no to that one.
We said no to those, okay. That was no. And this is coming back from assessors. Okay. Report. All right. So I think that's it, isn't it? Okay. I hit it all. The other ones are recurring articles and finished reports, so there's nothing we need to...
Nothing new.
Nothing new, okay. Okay.
Excellent.
Will the board at some point be discussing any of the citizen petitions or anything, or is there no, or do we not need to weigh in on those?
Pretty good. We are now assembling the warrant.
Okay.
The board will be approving the warrant at its next meeting.
Uh-huh.
And then thereafter, we'll start developing motions.
Okay.
And when we have motions, the board can then start taking positions.
Okay, all right. All right, so that's all we need to do right now on town meeting articles. Town managers report, Mr. Kamalo, is there anything new?
No further reports tonight.
No further reports. Are there any liaison reports or board invites?
I do. I have one from the chamber. They would like to present the chamber's new economic development committee. I think I brought it up the last my last meeting. They wonder if they can come in our first meeting in April and just do a quick overview of the stuff that is important to them and introduce themselves.
Okay. Anybody else?
Nope.
Just for board members, there is the five-town Board of Selectmen meeting is being held next Thursday, March 14th at 7 o'clock in Medway at the,
Yes, one of those descended, one
yeah,
going back from the main street.
It's kind of an interesting thing, and members of the board are invited. I think they're going to be...
I sent back yes.
Yeah, they're discussing department head compensation this time, and they're always open to more items. It's kind of just a freewheeling, just open-ended discussion with other selectmen. It's kind of interesting sometimes to hear what other people are doing, so...
That Thursday night, I have open space and elementary school building committee, so I am out of that.
Just mentioning, if anybody's interested. All right.
I'll go.
So, I would entertain, board agenda items, future items.
That's what I just did.
What did you say?
That's what I said, for our April 9th for the chamber.
Yes, the chamber. And I certainly think what Tim and Ben were both suggesting about at some point, just sit down and have a broad discussion on the budget process and just the general municipal finance might be helpful. I know you obviously had some thoughts, Ben, on what kind of things you might bring to that, and Tim mentioned as well. I'd like to just have more chance to sort of explore some of this. I think this was actually helpful tonight for us all to kind of understand how the pieces are put together. So, sort of a financial budget process discussion. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that is
Aye, aye.
unanimous, and we're
Great
not
job. Look at this.
too
Look
far.
at that. Not bad. After all that,
Really going down the
Good night.